Hey guys, welcome to Anchor to Truth. Today we are diving into part 3 of chapters 31 through 40 in the book of Jubilees with our overview. Our brother is joining us once again, Mr. Sean Griffin. Brother, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing okay. Thank you for having me on again. I'm excited about going through the rest of these chapters here. And just so anyone's interested or wondering, I have a little eye infection, so my eye is kind of swollen on the left side right now.
All right. So other than that, doing well?
Yeah. Other than that, I'm doing great.
Awesome.
Family's good. Little Levi's doing well. He's all over the place. He's now throwing himself off the couch because he thinks it's fun. So he's a climber who apparently doesn't get hurt.
all boy, huh?
Yeah. I'm just randomly trying to catch him from jumping off of something.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like God looking at us, right?
That's right.
Jonathan, stop.
Yeah,
Again?
God's going, so Kyle's a jumper. Got you. All right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, good stuff. Okay, well, I am excited for this. This is we should be able to close out the 31 through 40 section of the book of Jubilees tonight. So I'm excited to do that. I know we got some really, really fun stuff to discuss. Now, I know tonight we're going to be getting in, like I said, 37 to 40. However, Joe, why don't you give us a little refresher and start us off in towards the end of 36 there. How's that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when we pick up in 36, or actually, let's say this, in the end of 35, the mom dies, right? Mm-hmm. And I think her last words were, "Please don't let my boys kill themselves
or
kill each other."
Yeah.
And so, hey, not themselves, but each other. And so the father, goes to him, and Isaac's like, "Hey, boys, here's the deal. Let me sit down and talk to both y'all right now." And we kind of went into this last time a little bit, but I feel like more of that conversation, if you go back and reread 36, I feel like it's more pointed at Esau. It's almost like, "Hey, Jacob, I got to say these things, but you both are going to get the same speech, and here it is." And so they both get the same speech. They both, Isaac's basically like, and if one brother harms the other one, you're going to be cursed. I mean, all these bad things are going to happen. And it actually looks like, when you read through here, that Esau maybe is starting to have a change of heart, which is really encouraging. We get down to verses. Can we pop up on verse 12 real quick? 36.
Yep.
And there you go. And so Isaac's getting ready to divide up all the possessions, and it says he divided, which is Isaac, all his possessions between the two on that day, and he gave the larger portion to him that was firstborn, and the tower and all that was about it, and all that Abraham possessed at the well of the oath. And he said, "This large portion I shall give to the firstborn." And Esau said, "I have sold to Jacob and given my birthright to Jacob. To him let it be given. I have not a single word to say regarding it, for it is his." And I'm like, wow, this is, there's no arguing. There's no, he did me wrong, nothing. It's like right. That for the first time in all their lives, everyone's kind of on the same page, doing the right thing. And then it says, and in verse 18, Isaac slept on his bed that day rejoicing. He was like, "Thank you, Abba." And so like, he was sleeping in his bed rejoicing, and he slept the eternal sleep and died 180 years old. Wow, it's awesome.
Yep.
And so, Sean, what do you think about that as right before we get into 37?
I think this is a classic, not a classic, but a very easily observable traits within both men and women. Very often in life, you see that they are, as they grow older, they get more nostalgic, and their heart softens towards family members, especially when there's the looming death of a family member. So I think all this is playing on him. They know his father's dying. When you're young and you think your parents are never going to die, and you think that the world is your oyster and you can do whatever you want. Your mind's different. He's got that youthful vigor and warrior-like mentality when he's young, but now he's an old man, and he's clearly softened a little bit in regards towards his attitude towards Jacob. This, of course, is several years after the Genesis 30 encounter, where Jacob gives him all the gifts and tries to get a sense of reconciliation with him, but Jacob still keeps his distance, which I think was wise.
Yes.
And then also in the meantime, from that moment to this moment, Jacob has been caring for Isaac and Rebekah. financially and with physical sustenance, because Esau has took their stuff.
Right.
So you remember he took his inheritance that he. So yeah, I think it's like ironic that he's not complaining anymore, because he kind of already took what he thought was going to be taken from him. He took it from his parents earlier, but at the same time, it's definitely a different vibe than we see back in the moment in the tent, where he's like, "Oh, twice now my brother is stolen from me, deceived me." He's not saying that anymore. He's just like, "Yep, it's all Jacob's, and I want to honor you, Father, and I won't kill him, and well, at least won't fight him." So it's an interesting thing. It's almost like if he's lost. I'm not going to say he's not. I'm not going to say he's righteous, but it's almost as if he's lost that that super overly aggressive warrior nature that he was treating Jacob with earlier.
I don't know if this necessarily comes into play here, but I kind of get the impression that there's the idea of a little fence sitting here when it comes to his faith and how he walks it out and that sort of thing. And I think that's one reason why it's Yah says, "I would rather you be cold or hot, but not lukewarm. I'll spit you out of my mouth." I think that's because that's a very dangerous thing. If you're hot or cold, we know what to expect from you.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're fence sitting, if you're kind of lukewarm, if you're right there in the middle, then that can be very deceiving for either side, but especially the good side. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I kind of wonder if maybe he's doing a little lukewarm in here. And in this moment, it's not that he's trying to be deceptive, but that he's easily swayed one way or the other.
Yeah, I was about to. Exactly. I was going to say, usually hot and cold means you've already been fully persuaded, but lukewarm is you're still persuadable. And as we're going to see, as these events unfold, he's persuaded here in a few minutes. So stick with us, guys.
Yep. Stay tuned.
Right.
Well, with that, are we ready to get into 37, or did y'all have anything else at the end of 36 there?
I think this is probably the only video in Christendom that is temporarily speaking positively about Esau. Yeah. There's some BHI groups just tearing their clothes in anger right now.
A little sackcloth.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think exactly what you were saying, though, is like whenever we look at that end of 36 and you see this moment of like temporary bliss, you're like for one moment, it's like the eye of the storm almost, it's turning one way and you get beat up with the wind going one way and you get on the other side of the storm and then here goes the rest of it. Now it's coming back the other way. And sometimes the back end of that storm is worse than the front end if any of you guys have dealt with hurricanes. So, when we see that front end of it, Esau's all over the place. And he's causing a stink for mom, then for dad. And then, there's like this moment where it's like, all right, they sat down with dad. Everything was okay for a few minutes. It was their eye of the storm. And this is the moment where you get to make that decision, like while it's calm, are you going to keep it this way or are you going to come back with vengeance? And then we see right there in 37 verse 1 where it says, and on the day that Isaac, the father of Jacob and Esau, died, the sons of Esau heard that Isaac had given him the portion of the elder to the younger son Jacob, and they were very angry. So yeah, here comes that vengeance and fury, right? Esau's still he's kind of in the middle right now. He's like, hey, I'm more closely related to like my brother and my dad, and my mom just died. I mean, everything's a little bit like Sean was saying, it's a little bit of a sobering moment. You have a death in the family or a big impactful moment. People generally kind of let a lot of that little stuff go. They let some of the bygones be bygones. Hey, I know we used to fight when we were a kid, but let's do right by mom. Let's do right by dad. And then as soon as he gets home, the kids are like, hey, this ain't the dad that we know. The dad that we know is about his business, and he's going to go take what he wants by force. So we're angry because you didn't get your stuff, and by your stuff, our stuff. We wanted the stuff.
Which they already got the stuff previously. That's the weird part, right?
Yeah.
But because this was such a cultural tradition, they're thinking something went wrong here, right? How did Jacob get this and you didn't? Whatever this was, even though it's not detailed, right? As far as what is this, as far as the portion given to the elder versus the younger.
Well, it did go into it a little bit with like the tower and stuff like that. So I mean, there was a little bit of detail given.
Was it? I can't remember then. Was it just the tower, the land and the tower? And I'm sure there were some animals on the land.
Right.
But see,
I think it
Jacob
was,
hadn't Jacob been living there and taking
uh,
care of Isaac and Rebecca?
I think
Yes.
because after he came back from Laban, he was
Because
there.
we're about to see that he's going to be defending that as well.
Mhm.
Well, it almost seems kind of like Esau came in and he basically took the resources that his mom and dad had and was consuming them for himself and his family. But I don't remember if it's anywhere in here. You guys help me. But is there a possibility that they had fallen on some hard times, Esau and his clan, that they maybe weren't quite rolling with a whole lot of stuff, and maybe that's I don't know. I'm
Well,
just kind of speculating at the moment.
I think it's fair speculation because clearly, if you're not abiding in the covenant, you're going to fall in hard times.
Mhm. There you go.
Good
Yep.
point.
Yep. And then in this same area, you see a little bit of that give starting to happen. In verse 2, right after what Jonathan just read there, he starts off by saying, as he's responding to him, because they're getting angry.
Mhm.
They were angry because it's supposed to be given to the elder, right? And he said, and they strove with their father, saying, meaning he was pushing back a little bit. And he says, and they're asking, why is he giving it to the younger? And in verse 3, he says, because I sold my birthright to Jacob for a small mess of lentils. So he starts off good. I sold it. I did this.
Mhm.
But I'm almost wondering if in this same breath, in this same sentence here, where he's watching, I'm trying to visualize this, right? Like he's watching the expressions on their face start to go, you did what?
Mhm.
So he's starting to explain it, because I sold my birthright to Jacob for a small mess of lentils on the day my father sent me to hunt and catch. And on the day my father sent me to hunt and catch and bring him something that he should eat and bless me, he came with guile and brought my father food and drink, and my father blessed him and put me under his hand. So, and
I
then he
don't
says,
think I don't think any portion of this explanation was said innocently or in good faith.
any portion of it.
I think a small mess of lentils. I think all this is dripping with disdain and bitterness.
Okay. I was just kind of wondering if maybe there was a switch that was happening here. Like he's trying to explain it away, and he's like, this happened. But hey, I swore to my dad that I wouldn't do nothing, right? So
Yeah.
he just
I think
like
he's
trying to play both sides.
No, I agree with you, and I think this is the moment because he's responding to the anger of his sons,
Mhm.
and we're about to see here in a little bit what his sons threaten of him. So I think he knows his sons are capable of this, and that's why he's responding to this anger, not defending Jacob any longer, but now playing the victim.
Right. Well, and there's always that awkward relationship, and awkward in a good way. I mean, generally, you're supposed to be beholden to your own family, your own children, and stuff. And if you're the dad, you're the dad. You have to be superhero. You have to be dad. You have to show up, and I'm the one with wears the pants, and I get the big piece of chicken. And all of a sudden, the kids are looking at you like, "Well, you sound real weak right now. Like,
Right.
so you just gave up and rolled over? That's not my dad." And so I think there's a little bit of that, like, okay, I still got to go home and be alpha male. I still got to go be the dad. I can't come in with the scraps and then tell you that still follow me. You know what I mean? Especially the way that they were raised. It was hunt or be hunted. Then I think they didn't. He had to revert back immediately when he got home.
And do you guys know what would have solved all this? Had Esau had the relationship with Jacob and Isaac, it had any type of positive relationship with Isaac and Rebekah, because previously he stole from them and abused them basically. And Jacob had to step in. So had that not had been the previous history with his mother and father, his mother would have easily explained what Abraham had said. And Esau would have respected the idea that, okay, it's not because Jacob wants to just rule over me.
Right.
It's because the Lord chose my brother, and I respect that.
Before they were born.
And so it would have been very simple explanation if he'd have had that relationship with his mother and father, but he was the major contributor to his mother and father fearing him and not being able to talk to him about this stuff. Because then you've got to tell the narcissistic sociopath, hey, you don't have a good attitude. Your heart's not right. You think they're going to handle that well? Of course not. He just stole, he just previously neglected them, and stole all their resources. So I think that that would have solved this all. That way he then would have been, that means obviously we're dealing with long-standing fruit is what I'm talking about. The long-standing fruit of Esau's life. This is where the enemy can come in and just poke at that weak spot and say, there's no way this guy's going to do the right thing here, because what he's bred into his sons is going to rear its head in this moment. He's going to acquiesce to their anger and try to play along, right? And he's not going to stand up for Jacob. He's not going to stand up for the decision of the Lord. He's not going to stand up for his parents. I don't even think his children were at the death of Isaac, like we talked about last time. So that's why they're just being informed of this now, and they're all angry about it. Because if they had a good relationship with Isaac and Rebekah, they would have been there.
Sure.
So there's the death of your grandfather. Where are you at? You know what I mean? So like I barely had the money. Like when my grandfather died, I had to make a trip, and I didn't have the money for it, but I made it happen. You know what I'm saying? To be there at the funeral. So like there's a whole lot of peripheral things here going on that all of this is working is the fruit that is working against Esau, to set him up. Chicken's coming home to roost. He's sowed in destruction. He's sowed in wickedness. He's about to reap destruction. And we're seeing all that come to pass.
Yeah, because even if he really was having a change of heart, even just for a moment, you see the way that his sons contend with him. We'll go into that here more in just a little bit. But the way they speak to their father is like, you either show up or we're going to kill you. I'm like going, this is a direct correlation to your upbringing.
Right.
Yeah.
You brought these boys up with this mentality of take whatever you want, do what thou wilt, and do for you. They've seen you take advantage of your own parents. They've seen you do all these things. So it's no surprise when you show up and they're like, hey, Dad, where's all the stuff? And there is no stuff. You raised them. This like you just said, you're ready to reap everything you just sowed all those years.
You guys, I know it's a modern reference, but have you guys seen that movie from 2019? It's called Knives Out.
No, I haven't seen it yet.
It's about the family squabbling over inheritance when the patriarch dies and the will's going to be read, and when they read the will and people don't get what they think they're going to get bequeathed to them, everything just implodes. And they're still trying to figure out if it's a murder or not with the patriarch. So it's a well-written screenplay. It's a well-written story, but that's what I'm seeing. Had the sons of Esau been at the death of Isaac, if they'd have traveled with Esau to go to the death of Isaac, we would have had a Knives Out moment then with his sons going, wait, what? Jacob gets this? What are you talking about? And then, of course, you've got Reuben and Simeon and Judah and Levi, and all the boys are going to be standing on the other side going, yeah, that's what's going to happen. You guys are going to go back home and shut your mouth. You know what I mean? So it would have been what we're about to see unfold would have probably already happened over the deathbed of Isaac. So it's probably a good thing they didn't show up.
But yeah, Sean, to your point earlier when you're talking about, with Esau, if he would have, actually listened to mom and dad and you had that opportunity to get that information across, I wonder if it would have even gone one step further, like with Isaac and Ishmael. It said, well, you'll be 12 kings, but you'll be 12 princes. Like, don't think you get left out of this story.
Right.
And I don't think there was any part of Esau's birth where it was like, oh yeah, you're not only going to miss out on the blessing and there's going to be a war between the two of you, but like, there was nothing where it's like, Esau, you're forever going to be under the thumb. You're a bad guy from birth. It was just, hey, there's two kids, and for whatever reason, number 2 is going to end up in charge. And as children, that could mean any number of things. Esau could have easily had his, like how Jacob has his 12 kids. He could have had 12 kids, and they could have been the 12 princes. They could have did the story once over again. But yet you see Esau then just fall 100% by the wayside, and then like actually just literally not make it through the rest of the story. But yeah, it is such a sad ordeal when you see like your 2 children of like the most important family line in all of scripture history, and you just can't be smart enough just to play your role in whatever it is. Even if it was not Jacob level blessing, it would have been -1 from that. And Jacob gets 100, you get 99. God doesn't dole out, blessings with like 100 and then 0 or 120. Esau he'd have been good. He would have still made the story. We'd have still been talking about him and his family. But instead, I think he takes an arrow or something.
Yeah, it's like Esau is continually throughout his whole life, he's proving over and over again with almost every interaction why God didn't choose him.
Mhm.
Why? Because of his rebellious, stubborn nature, he needs to be ruled over by someone that's righteous. You know what I mean? Like, he's proving God right with literally almost everything he does and says, except for the death of Isaac and the things we spoke of. He seemed to have a humble attitude at that point. But all these other moments, he's just like, God's just being proven right.
Yep.
I also think it's really weird that in rabbinic literature, which I don't think is scripture, but in rabbinic literature, this writing of Jasher, they give Esau a hero role and say that he killed Nimrod.
That's right.
And they claim in the book of Jasher that Esau beheaded Nimrod and was coming back from that battle when he sold his birthright for the lentil soup. And that's why he said, I'm at the point of death. And, you know, very different storyline than Book of Jubilees. I personally think Jubilees is scripture, both historically, the manuscript history, and also theologically, which, in my opinion, Jasher doesn't have any of that going for it.
I agree.
But that's just interesting that within that rabbinic tradition, they would clearly, within ancient Israel rabbinic tradition, they didn't view Esau as someone that was faithful to God, and they viewed Jacob as a righteous man of God. But yet they put Esau in that particular writing, which I think is just the writing of a particular rabbi in the past. They put Esau in a hero role to take out the big bad Nimrod, which I think is weird.
Yeah.
Almost instead of him dealing with accountability for his actions, it was, oh, well, he had an excuse for giving up the birthright. Well, he just went to war doing something holy and noble. So here's his excuse for taking the lentils versus, no, you just made a dumb decision and you weren't being wise with your choices and you didn't care about your birthright, so you gave it away.
Yeah, it's really strange that they include Nimrod in that. But there's a lot to do with Nimrod in the book of Jasher and Abraham's interaction and family line. And so I just think I don't know.
Wouldn't you think that'd be something important to bring up too when you come back? Hey, brother, I just killed Nimrod. Can I get something to eat?
Because the only mention of Nimrod in the book of Jubilees is in chapter 8, which is called Nimrod. As it lists off who was it? One of the descendants married Nimrod's daughter. What was his name? In Jubilees chapter 8, I can't remember his name, but that's who it's talking about. It's Nimrod's daughter married one of the descendants of Shem in the line of Abraham's descendancy. And so he's mentioned in here, but not with all the details, and there's no big bad battle between Abraham and Nimrod like in Jasher and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just interesting that they give Esau this weird hero role. I've never understood how that made sense of anything, you know.
I know we have a few subscribers that they support both Jubilees and the book of Jasher. I can't get behind the book of Jasher myself either. And it's for those types of conflicts that I see in the two books and testing them out. There's just so many things like that. And there's so much Judaism or rabbinic stuff thrown in there. You know,
Legends, which Paul aptly called Legends of the Jews.
Right. Can there be some truth in the book of Jasher? Absolutely. But it's so mingled in with the other stuff that it makes it. I think the best thing that Jasher can be used for, in my personal opinion, is to get an idea of the mindset of the people who wrote it.
Right.
That's essentially all I can see that it's very good for. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it was admittedly part of the Talmud, written by one of the rabbis, but never included in any canons of ancient Israel or any other Christian canons. So it's just interesting that, it is. Why was that rabbi? Because clearly, even Judaism doesn't claim that all the Talmud is divinely inspired scripture. Right. They think it's just a bunch of religious leaders discussing scriptural concepts, decisions, judgments, and at times scripture itself. And so, it's just interesting.
Yeah, we did an Honor of Kings video on that book of Jasher about a year ago. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, we did.
Good stuff.
I want to say this real quick also. when we reread through when he's telling his sons why, he goes, well, I gave up my birthright for a mess of lentils. And then my brother comes in while I'm hunting, takes away all my birthright, or takes, all everything else. But then it's funny. I think he's trying to keep a little bit of face with his sons. And as to why this is kind of written this way a little bit. And because in verse 4, it says, it's almost like, and now of all things, now our Father hath caused us to swear, me and him, that we shall not mutually devise evil either against his brother, and that we shall continue in love and in peace each with. I hate the way this is written. Sometimes it messes with my head, man. All right, let's try this again. So it says, either against his brother, and that we shall continue in love and in peace each with his brother, and not make our ways corrupt. So it's almost like he's telling them, yeah, he got me these mess of lentils, and then while I was out hunting, going to make a stew for my dad, and he goes there and steals everything else from me. And then on top of that, my dad makes us swear we can't hurt one another. It's almost like he's covering all the bases with his sons, but it's not working.
This would have been the moment where he says, after he explains the soup, the birthright, he would then said, but I have sworn not to hurt him. Mm-hmm. Instead, it's our dad made us mutually swear not to hurt each other. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It should be like, now's your time to actively proclaim what you agreed to, because you're going to stand by it. But he doesn't do that.
Yep. It's almost like he was saying, I was kind of forced to do this, and so I got to go along with it. Yeah.
But if something were to happen,
well, they definitely took it one way, because then they took it as if he was still trying not to do that, because their very next statement, verse 5 here, and they said to him, we shall not hearken unto thee. So in other words, we're not going to go along with what you're saying. Right. We're not going to hearken unto thee to make peace with him, for our strength is greater than his strength, and we are more powerful than he. We shall go against him and slay him and destroy him. And if you don't like it, we can handle some business right now. It says, and if thou wilt not go with us, we shall do hurt to thee also. Now you listen to us, in verse 6. Now you hearken unto us.
Yep.
So they're laying down the law with him.
The mindset, though, is not just destroy Jacob, but and his sons. Mm-hmm. So like they're like, look, and we'll take out our nephews too. Like this is just, these people are wicked, bro.
Well, they'd have to, because then that blessing would then go down next. So they were like, hey, only way for us to eventually get the stuff is to get rid of all of them, and then we will be the people of promise, sort of, maybe.
But it's suddenly they care about lineage, what's proper succession. Like
they just want stuff.
You just previously stole all the stuff that Isaac and Jacob had, or Isaac and Rebecca had. So basically now they're wanting Jacob's stuff, because I don't know how Isaac, because remember Isaac had the poor eyesight, he needed to be taken care of. Jacob came in and kind of played the rescuer by providing sustenance for his mother and father. Rebecca's not pulling her weight and somehow rebuilding an empire. So so clearly now anything that they're calling their fathers is truly just Jacob's.
That's right.
So that in their mind, the thing that they didn't get was actually Jacob's stuff. You know what I mean? Because they already took their father's stuff. Like the whole thing is messed up. These people are just they needed a spanking for sure.
Yeah.
Well, a spanking they did get.
Somebody spared the rod.
Yeah.
Well, and you kind of go into that thought process in verse 8. You know, they get all sassy and in their attitudes about it. And he's like, and they said unto him, this is exactly what we was talking about. Always being dumb. You know, he's like, but it literally says this is exactly the mode of action from your youth until this day. Thou art putting thy neck under his yoke. You know, he's like, and then they say, we shall not hearken to these words. So he's like, oh, we get it. You promised your brother some stuff. You said some stuff in front of your dad. That wasn't my dad. I didn't say that. We don't agree to that. But it's like, ain't it just like you? Always, playing the patsy, always coming in with the weak sauce. You know what? Get out the way. It's so disrespectful. Like that whole conversation is just straight up disrespectful. And these are all grown men we're talking about. And, yes, Esau's still dad, but they're a bunch of grown men. You know, you can't even come to the table and say, let's rock, paper, scissors, or, you know, let's throw some dice. It was like, you always been weak. You've been weak since a kid. We weren't even born yet. You were weak. Like, hey, kids, that's kind of tough.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I imagine they thought Esau was going to slay Jacob when he was coming back from Laban's, and he met him on the way. You know, I imagine but God showed up and peace was made for a moment, and you know. So I'm sure all this has been compounding over the years. They're just continually thinking their father is just not. They're not acting. He's not acting like the warlord alpha male that they want him to be.
Right. Yeah. When are you going to do something about it? You're not going to do it? Fine. We're at the point now, we're going to do something about it.
And this is why it doesn't make sense to me that a rabbi would put Esau as the hero against Nimrod, because they're acting like a Nimrod. They're all in the pattern of wickedness. They're acting like a warrior of Babylon would act. Like, so why they're acting antagonistic toward the righteous of Israel, right? So like why suddenly? Yeah, anyway, never mind. Sorry. I won't belabor that point.
No, it's a great point to make. It's a great point to make.
Well, and they go so far as to hire people. That's kind of what killed me. I was like, so you know, hey, Jacob and his boys are about their business.
They don't play, son.
Yeah, we're not just going to be able to go with just us.
Right.
Now, we're it says we're stronger than them. That was their words out of their own mouth. Surely we are stronger than them. We have more strength. Let's go hire some dudes just in case. You know what I mean?
We're stronger than them. Asterisk there.
Yeah, once we get some dudes.
Once we hire a bunch of mercenaries.
Right.
They're like, I did hear about Uncle Jacob or Uncle Judah throwing a bull by the horns through the air, so maybe we might want to.
Yeah. Well, and you got to think too, like they have Philistia and Aram and all these guys. Like there might have been some giants in there, or at least some, you know, I mean, some Nephilim type people. So it just kind of makes you wonder. They might have had even a few big dudes on top of the hired people, and they still were like, hey, we don't really stand a chance against the 12 brothers. Those guys over there are locked in tight.
Yeah.
But we're stronger.
Yeah. Again, if they remembered, everyone already knew, but I'm sure the sons of Esau and Esau himself knew what Simeon and Levi did to Shechem. Because remember, it said it put all their surrounding towns in fear of Israel. And that's why Jacob was mad. And so I'm sure they heard about it too. And that's why they're thinking we need some help.
So, and the amount of dudes that they gathered for this is a lot.
Yeah.
It says right here in 9, and they sent to Aram and to Aduram, to the friend of their father, and they hired along with them 1,000 fighting men chosen of war. And Moab from the children of Ammon, those who were hired 1,000 chosen men. And from Philistia 1,000 chosen men in war. And from Edom, from the Horites, 1,000 chosen. So we're at 4,000, and we get down here to the Kittim, or Kittim, however you want to pronounce that, and it says mighty men of war. So
yeah.
Some dude, we don't even know.
I think Kittim is. I think that's the word transliteration of Greece people.
I think when we looked at that before, I think that's what we came up with too. Yeah.
And ancient Greece during this era was known for giant
big
warriors.
Boys.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're bringing in the heavy guns.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Kittim was a major player as well. So just like Philistia, so clearly Esau had some connections. Because you're like, what? That means these men, just like Christ talks about, right? If someone's going to set out to war, does he not first sit down and evaluate, can he actually win? And count the cost. So I would imagine the Horites, the Philistines, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the Kittimites sat down and after the proposition of, hey, this guy in the south of the Levant named Esau, he's trying to hire us to go take over this guy named Jacob, Israel. That we heard he took out the Shechemites, but what else has he done? Right? He built a couple towns over there. He's a wealthy man in that area. But he has a couple thousand men that are a part of his entourage, if you will. But he's not a nation in their minds, right? He's not like the 10 Greek city-states. He's not like the 5 army strong empire of Philistia. So why did they think that this was something that they needed to supply all these men for?
Right.
it just lets you know
They
Israel and
Because
his
they're-
boys, they made an impression.
Because they're not going against the men of Israel. They're going up against the God of Israel.
yeah.
It could be that too. Yeah.
That's my take on it. They're going to bring out the big guns because they have to bring everything that they got. This is an all or nothing moment for them.
Now we know in most cases throughout Scripture that is the paradigm. Kyle, you're right. Is that what is Goliath shouting on the battlefield? You know, your God is weak.
Mhm.
And then what is David saying? Who is this speaking blasphemy against our God? Obviously, I'm paraphrasing. Go read 1 Samuel 17. But seems to be like, when what's his name? Um, is it Ashurbanipal? What was his name? The guy from Assyria that was threatening Isaiah in Isaiah's day, threatening Jerusalem to besiege it, and then sent 185,000 men. And that guy, he said he's mocking God
What's his name?
in that threat to Hezekiah in Israel and Judah. He's mocking God in his threat. He's
Right.
saying that I've taken out all these other nations' gods. What's your God? Right. So this was the mindset of most of these nations, was that they're not just fighting against people. It's God versus God, and our God's bigger than your God, and we're going to take your God out when we defeat you. I just don't get that feeling from Esau. In fact, throughout this whole narrative, we don't really see Esau's spiritual any details about Esau's spiritual mindset hardly at all, as far
Mhm.
as what God he's actively worshiping now, because he's clearly not worshiping Yahweh.
Hmm.
Right? Am I missing something, Kyle? What you got?
Well, again, I don't think that this is coming from Esau. I think this is coming from Esau's boys.
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm agreeing with you by saying when these other nations that are being hired out to come to this battle, they're counting the costs and they're also thinking, oh, this would be great glory for our God,
Yeah.
right? We'll go defeat
Yeah.
this guy who claims to be a descendant of Shem, and they've always worshipped the God of Israel. These are the people that historically chastised us at the Tower of Babel and caused us all to go dispersed back to our lands. And like if they know any of the history at all, right? Usually the kings did because they had privileged access and information. So if they know any of the back history of the family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they're thinking, oh, we're going to go to destroy their God and them, that makes sense. But we don't even get an inkling of that from Esau's mindset or or how he raised his boys or what God they're actually
That's
serving
true.
at this point. That's all I'm trying to say.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
That's true. I just kind of lean that way because of mainly because of who they go and get, right? Like,
Yeah.
at
Their
least that's-
allegiance.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
well, at the same time, the empire of Babylon was mixed with a variety of different gods, the same pantheon represented by different names. And there are moments in historical, even in scripture, where those nations were fighting each other for the greatness of, even though it's the same God, but the name of their God.
Mhm.
Right.
Right. And so they had these internal war. And I just personally, I think it's all a stage play, just like today. War is used as a tool for stealing wealth, reshaping boundary zones, and a whole bunch of other concepts. It's just a back planning tool for cultural change. But while there's always some press release that's put up to justify the war, even if it's just the ancient superstition of our God is greater than yours.
Right.
Right. So I'm in agreement. And I apologize. I'm not trying to get too detailed, but there is a lot going on here of like, why suddenly we got this whole spotlight focused on the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And here comes Esau and this lasting turmoil with Jacob. And then suddenly we have in the mix the rest of the known world.
Mhm.
Like, this is big. This is a huge moment here.
Yep.
Of like the rest of like the big power players, everyone except Egypt is here. Like, it's this, not everyone, but India's not here, but this is a big deal, right? This is a big deal
I have a thought.
because the Ammonites ruled Assyria. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have a thought. Maybe because it had nothing to do with quote unquote their gods. If we look at the mighty men of old, the men of renown, these Nephilim, these giants, these great rulers, all that stuff. If we look at Nimrod, I'm glad he was brought up earlier because maybe that comes into play here. Was it less about their gods and more about them attaining or trying to be gods? rulership, ownership over all of everything. I don't know. I'm just spitballing
don't
here a
know.
little bit, but
I don't know. I don't know I'm pretty sure the Babylonian Empire is still intact here, but I don't know who's at the head of it right now.
Mm.
Because the five nations of the Philistia Empire, which was the Amorites, they seem to have a huge stake for a long time during this era in that empire. And with even leading up to Og, what was his name? The brother of Og, Sihon, being like these huge warlords in that area that ruled from all this area all the way up into the Babylonian region across the Euphrates and everything. So like I'm just without having a full political breakdown, it just seems like suddenly Esau has leveled up, or this is just revealing to us Esau's influence this whole time. Okay, think about. I'm sorry. To stop me if we got to cut some of this out, but there.
yeah, go for it.
I'm reminded of the words of Josephus in History of the Jews, where he is, or Antiquity of the Jews, and he's writing about how the Canaanite cities in this region were all fortified because they knew the descendants of Israel were going to come back and reclaim the land that was given to them.
Yep.
So this is in that same era. This is that same people, the same mindset, and the same empires that are still around once the Israelites come out of the Exodus and go in to fight the Philistines and the Amorites and all these guys. So I'm thinking, and of course we see in the book of Jubilees, chapter 47 or 48, where the Canaanites who ruled Assyria attacked Egypt. So the Canaanite, because apparently because of the lasting days of Joseph, it seems as if Egypt wasn't ruled by Babylon, which is wild. Could also be why they're not involved in the skirmish. And then you have, in a little bit later in the timeline, you have the Canaanite king who is ruling over the empire from Assyria, which was the capital of Babylon, then comes to attack Egypt, overtakes Egypt, closes the gates, starts oppressing the Israelites. So that means we're in this like interim time where the Canaanite powers are still extremely strong, and they know that somehow, some way, they know, according to Josephus, this is why they were fortifying their cities like they were for 400 years, because they know the Israelites. This is what, just how many years away is this before Israel takes his 75 down into Egypt? Not very far.
Yeah.
Right. So we're getting close to that time period where he's about to leave the land anyway, which begins the countdown to when they come all back. Right. And so this is the enemy already prepping, just like I believe they do today, by the way. They're already prepping for the second coming of the Messiah as much as they can to try to withstand him. And so they're already prepping. And so it just makes perfect sense to me that, like, hey, we've got a moment here. Why not forget about fortifying all of our cities throughout Canaan? Let's just take him out now. And this could be some of that background knowledge and motivation to why they even got involved in what seems like the skirmish between two brothers. What seems like a very small local skirmish suddenly becomes an entire known world regional conflict.
Right.
Well, I just want to add to that a little bit too. My thoughts on this is because I'm going back and looking back over it. These guys were men of hire. So, when the sons are going out and they're actually going and they're recruiting these men they're paying for them to come and fight.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is as much about the Moabs and the Philistia and all these guys actually wanting really a piece of anything that Jacob has. I think these guys are just for hire. They're like, hey, I got some, look, because it even says in here, it says they're the friend of their dad. In verse 9, it says, and they sent to Aram and to Aduram to the friend of their father, and they hired along with them 1,000 fighting men. So
I want to add to that when you're done.
Yeah, so I don't think this is as much about other kingdoms. Even I think this is a family squabble going on, and through Esau's association, he's like, "Look, I got some problems with my brother or whoever, and I've got a little bit of coin here, and I need 1,000 of your best men to go fight for me." So I don't see this as much as nation against Israel at this moment, as much as the boys are basically getting their team together because they know this isn't going to be an easy fight. They really know that they can brag about how strong they are all day long, but if you were that strong, you're not hiring over 3,000 men for hire. Then also basically, we can speculate 99% that these mighty men were of extraordinary size. So they're just getting their armada together and like going to try to take care of business.
I 100% agree. I just struggle to believe that selectively chosen men from all these particular nations are going to that concept is going to go unnoticed to the rulers of those nations. If these are actual men of war that are selectively chosen, and I'm the king over Aram, I'm the king over Philistia and Kittim, I'm gonna be like, whoa. We got our own battles going on here. I just struggle to think that this was done unbeknownst to the ruling authorities.
Oh, I wasn't saying that at all. I think that when he says he went to his dad's friend, these are dudes that are in charge. Like, hey, I need some help. Okay, here's 1,000. Who you fighting? Oh, you're fighting your brother Jacob and his sons. Oh, here you go. Here's 1,000 guys.
I think I have potentially the answer to this.
Okay.
So it was also mentioned, Babylon's still doing its thing in this time frame, right? How are they not ruling over Egypt and da-da-da-da-da-da-da? They are. But it's not seen in the same light. So who is the ruling nation today? Now, militarily, you can look at it and say, okay, the United States is the most dominant force that has ever existed on the face of the earth. Militarily. Who's the banking? You've got England for that. Where's the religious, center of all that, everything that happens? We got Israel there, right? And then there's other aspects to how all this plays out, right? This is a United Nations. This is an ancient United Nations.
Oh yeah, that is the Babylonian Empire. Yeah.
That's what this is. So this is a, hey, we're all under the umbrella of Babylon, United Nations, one nation, one tongue, we're under Babylon. So even though we have our own nations, we're many kings, we're many nations, but we're all of one mind in this aspect. So I'm going to war. Now, if the United States goes to war and they call in from help from another country, that's what we do.
Yeah, your allies.
We pay them, we help. If we're calling in for help, we pay them for that support.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I see playing out right here. I see United Nations happening.
Yeah, you're calling on your allies.
Do you think their flag had the flat Earth symbol on it?
Probably so.
Okay.
Definitely had the wreath of Zeus for sure. Yeah. What's interesting also, and when we think about Egypt, is seemingly not, ruled by Babylon or Assyria, because we see that pop up later in a few chapters later. But that means, I think the famines had something to do with that. And this is just speculation because we have limited information, but we're going to see in chapter 44, 45 here coming up that there's another great famine in the land. We already talked about this last time, I think it was, or maybe it was 2 videos ago. We talked about there was a big famine in Canaan. But we're going to see another large famine in Canaan, which forces Joseph to go down to Egypt. And then in the days of forces Jacob to go down to Egypt. And then in the days of Joseph, there's another worldwide famine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could have relinquished the power and control they had over all their different provinces, specifically Egypt, to the point where now this Canaanite who's ruling from Assyria says, you know what, we need to get control of Egypt again. Because this massive famine happened. All the world was coming to Egypt to buy grain. Egypt became the focal point. They got some independence. Joseph was running things really well. And then we need to install someone that's going to change everything economically, and starts with slave labor and all kinds of stuff. So I think and of course, why is there famine? Because the covenant is not being abided by.
Yeah.
So God's got built into his way of life, oh, you think you just can build empires and forget about me? I'm going to cripple you with some famine.
Right.
You can't, you're going to have to constantly be rebuilding empires, because you can be as strong as you want to be, but less than 2 weeks, I'll kill everybody with no famine, with no food.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And you need more than 2 weeks to travel from kid them to India to control your empire regionally, right?
Mhm.
So like, yeah, there's just all the logistics come into this, and the father's got this all figured out.
Oh,
I don't think it's any accident that he was like, you stop abiding in the covenant and you're going to have sky like iron and land like bronze. You're going to have sickness, death, and disease. You're going to have warfare. It's just another built-in system for him to continue to not let these people get too big.
Mhm.
I think
Well-
this would be a great topic for us to like do solely on its own. Like we should really dig into this in its own video. I think this would
Bro.
be a cool topic.
I think I've joked about this before, but like this is why I've said since 2018 I want to do an entire series just on the wars in Scripture.
Yeah.
Because
Let's do it.
let's do it. There's
do it.
an abundance of conversation, historical comparison, and it's also a great apologetic too because it lines up what Scripture claims with written history.
Awesome.
I'm down for it. Yeah, and it's funny. I want to throw a few words into this conversation. And so when we look at this like situation with Jacob and Esau, I do think that the other nations, they were just opportunists. They were, hey, we got some money. You're gonna let us go fight? All right, cool. Why not? And we get to knock one of these God people down a peg. This is a no-brainer. It's not like we're gonna fight in our friends. We don't like these guys anyway. They're getting ready to start taking over, like Sean was saying. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity there. Now, the dumb side of this whole conversation is Esau and his kids, we need to go get stuff. We want to go get the blessing. Yet they turn around and empty their coin purse to go die. This was a double dumb, right? This is when you double down and dumb. We want more money, so we're going to go use all our money to hire people to go to a battle that we're going to lose. There was not a possibility of smart there. If you had money, then that's your blessing. Enjoy the money. If you have enough money to hire 4,000 people, you were doing pretty well off. Why squander it in a position where you might go die? Unless they were just 100% confident, which they weren't, because they were hiring people. So this whole scenario is just it's ill-formed battle plans. And I think that's just because when you fight with the Most High, you bring wisdom and knowledge to this table. When you're fighting with your heart and your emotions, you're bringing dumb to the table. I think they were just being a little dumb, and we kind of see that as they said to their father, "Go with us and lead, or we shall kill you." Right? And then verse 11, they're like, "Hey, if you not only are we going to be dumb, we wanted to be guilty by association. You got to be here too. Misery loves company. You got to come fight with us." And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, 12, he's all, Esau's all mad. There's anger and indignation because he's like, how dare you tell me to go fight my brother? And then in 13, so quickly, it's like this flip of a switch. But after he remembered all the evil which hidden in his heart, that's that moment. That's whenever it's that defining moment in his life was he heard it, he fought against it, he rebelled against it, he tried to keep things on the straight path. And it was almost like that moment where he gave himself back over to the evil inclinations of the heart. He's like,
Yep.
and I remember, you know what? There was that one time when I had my G.I. Joe and you took his leg off, and I'm upset about it to this day. It's like instead of thinking on things good, holy, and pure, as Scripture tells us, he wanted to think on everything bad. He's like, give me a reason to go fight you.
Yep.
And I think, of course, Satan's going to come, like Sean says, poke, 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 poke. You keep poking eventually, and you don't have a strong person. You're not deeply rooted in Scripture. You're going to succumb to those feelings and thoughts. And he was just, okay, first it was his sons, then it was his dad, then it was Jacob, then all of a sudden it's poke, 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 poke. And it just spilled over. He's like, you know what? I do remember all the bad and the evil. He didn't even say negative. He said, remember all the evil that was,
Yeah.
and that's what his mom and dad said. He's like, you've been evil your whole life. All your deeds are wicked. So his parents were like, I'm trying to tell you, everything you did, everything I can remember has been bad. And he has this little eye of the storm moment. And then here comes the back end of that storm. Now all the evil comes back, and it's sad to see that go down because, like I said, it's all bad decisions from the moment that he left the gravesite, or however he was buried, the double cave. From the moment he left there, it was just a slow decline and then off the cliff.
Mm-hmm. What could you bring up 13 again for me real quick?
Yeah.
Right there. Now here's the thing, Jonathan. This is why. It says, but afterward he remembered all the evil which lay hidden in his heart. This is a lot of just, unforgiveness that's been
right,
down in there, and all of a sudden it's like this is what he's remembering is there's unforgiveness.
He had it pushed way down.
He pushed it way down. On ever let it come back up? You never let me win. But you know, this goes to show us right here how dangerous unforgiveness is for all of us. So with Cain, what we see is the Father does warn him, you know, that sin's crouching at the door. And so, but instead of having forgiveness, instead of getting past this time, he allows this now to overtake his emotions. And we see the action of that is his brother's dead. You know, and even when the Father comes to him and goes, "Hey, where's your brother at?" Well, who am I, my brother's keeper? So he still got attitude. Even with God himself, he's like, he still got attitude. But again, I just wanted to point that out that you know, when we see this in Jacob seemed, I'm sorry, not Jacob, but Esau seemed to be a little bit towards, you know, a better light. And then when he gets around his boys, it's like that old nature gets turned right back on. And then he's like, you know what? I do remember all that stuff now that's been down in here, and I've been oppressing all these years. And I'm basically going to give myself an excuse now to go do exactly what I know I'm not supposed to do. And so, anyway.
One last thing on this topic for me, anyway. You know, in 11, they're telling their dad, you know, go with them and lead them, or we're going to kill you if you don't. And he was filled with wrath and indignation that his sons were forcing him to do this. He was really mad with them that they were forcing him to do this because he didn't want to at this point still. But afterward, he remembered all the evil, and he remembered not the oath, right? So he just kind of let that go to the side. And as we continue on down into this, it says he starts putting up some interesting thoughts. And he says, "Hear these words which I declare unto you: if the boar can change its skin and make its bristles soft as wool, or if it can cause horns to sprout forth on its head like the horns of a stag or of a sheep, then I shall observe the tie of brotherhood with thee. And if the breasts separated themselves from their mother, and thou hast not," yada, yada, yada. My point is this. In his mind, he has convinced himself that, yeah, I made an oath. I made an oath with my father, with my brother. Yet this dude hasn't acted like a brother to me all my life. So he's therefore not my brother. So I don't have to honor this oath. Like, he's fully justified himself in his mind. You know, when he went from being really mad with his sons, right? And he was filled with wrath and indignation and all this stuff. He was really mad with them. But afterward, he remembered all the evil. So it kind of makes me think that he's dwelling on this. He's thinking about this. And maybe he sits down and has a moment and is like, you know what? These are my kids, man. Why would they go up against me like this? Am I in the wrong here? Am I thinking about this the right way? You know, I don't know. I just try to apply this to everyday life. You know, how we do these types of things ourselves. You know, and I could just that's how I see that playing out. That he ends up convincing himself that they're right, and he justifies it. Done from there.
Yeah,
and he fears man, not the Most High.
He's definitely easily persuadable. Also, I was thinking about this. It seems as if, I wonder, and this is pure speculation that's not stated, I'm just wondering here. I'm wondering if when he hired these other thousands of men, if he explained the situation by saying, or not him, I mean, apparently he didn't hire them, the sons did. But I wonder if they explained the situation by saying, hey, basically our uncle has been pulling the wool over the eyes of our father and is taking advantage of our father. Our father's the elder. Our uncle is not, but he's getting the birthright. Everyone knows that's odd. That's not the way we do things. In the ancient world, everyone knows, well, the elder gets it. How is the younger getting it? What does this mean? But of course, they're not taking into account, this is what God ordained. The reason why this is happening is because Jacob, the younger, is righteous and the elder is unrighteous. They don't respect any of those concepts. To them, they're just hearing traditions being broken, and that's unrighteous. So I just wondered if it's like, oh yeah, we'll help you. It almost seems like a noble cause suddenly to them.
Yeah, a little bit better, a little more motivation.
Yeah, it's just interesting that there's a lot. There's just so much going on in this chapter. It's a really fun chapter because we start to see All this tension built in the life of Esau and Jacob is suddenly coming to a head.
Mhm.
Suddenly Esau is showing his true colors to the point where it's going to truly cost him something that he can't get out of this time. And I'm excited to get into it because Jacob's response is just classic.
Mhm.
Well,
It's
go ahead
just-
with it.
Just epic. Yeah, so basically here in 14, Jacob knew that they were coming against him to battle. He was mourning for Leah's wife until they approached very near to the tower with 4,000 warriors and chosen men of war. And the men of Hebron sent to him, saying, "Behold, your brother come against you to fight you with 4,000 girt with the sword. They carry shields and weapons, and they love Jacob more than Esau. They loved Jacob more than Esau. So they told him, for Jacob was a more liberal and merciful man than Esau. But Jacob would not believe it until they came very near to the tower. And he closed the gates of the tower. He stood in the battlements and spoke to brother Esau. Noble is the comfort wherewith you've come to comfort me for my wife who has died. And this, the oath that you swore to my father, to your father, against to your mother before they died. You have broken the oath, and on the moment you did swear to your father, you were condemned." So I love this anachronistic insult,
Yeah.
right? This retroactive insult of like, oh, by the way, he's being very sarcastic. Oh,
Oh,
you've
yeah.
come
Oh,
to
yeah.
comfort me on the day of my wife's death. Oh, how noble of you. But by the way, and then he gets real. But by the way, the moment you swore this oath to our dead parents, you condemned yourself.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about this, going back to verse 13, what's lay hidden in his heart is, and what you said, Kyle, putting this all together, this concept of, oh, look, he's lawyering his way out of this by now considering Jacob not a brother,
Right.
right? I don't know if you guys remember that cultural term where people used to joke around and be like, oh, you just got lawyered,
Yep.
right? Because someone come up with the workaround with the language. So he's like lawyering his way in his mind out of this oath. This is why he forgets the oath.
Right.
But ultimately, like, he's not, how do I say this? He is he's simply, and I would suspect there's unclean spirits involved here. As far as him being able to so easily forget this oath after his father just passed away, right? But it seems as if now they want him not just to be a part of this battle, but you got to lead the battle.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to be at the front of all these mighty men, standing there looking at the tower about to attack, because you need to show your face to your brother that you're leading this attack.
Right.
And so here is, I don't know what the distance is, but for Jacob to just shout seemingly from the tower, he just shouts out to the battle arrayment in the field below, "Oh, how noble of you to come comfort me on the day of my wife's death." Like, Jacob, that's super salty, bro. you know what's happening. Like,
Right.
what is this, Monty Python?
And you
Like
brought friends with you.
Yeah, and you brought all these people with you. That's amazing. Oh, and by the way, here comes the punch. You condemned yourself the moment you swore to our father.
Mhm.
Like,
Notice there was no fear. It's like he
No,
was
there's no
ready.
fear.
He was ready.
He did get a heads up from the men of Hebron, which I think was really awesome of them. And
Yep.
that's the fruit of righteousness in Jacob's life.
Exactly. That's why you take care of your people.
Yep. Yeah, this is such an amazing movie if it ever gets made, which it never will be made.
Right. But yeah, no, I love this like little interaction because, like you said, with Hebron, they're in the middle. They're kind of like they're literally we're with whoever's better, and they're just
Mhm.
using logic. They don't really
Yeah.
care about who's who and what name, who's got what name. They're like, hey, Jacob's been taking care of us, and he's always giving us the extras. He's always making sure that we're good to go. And he's just ruthless. We don't want to be buddy with him. So let's go tell Jacob, and this will turn out good for us in the long run. That's just a wise choice. And I think in our world today, that whole mentality of you win more over with honey than you do with salt, or sugar versus salt or vinegar, however you want to say it. The better you are to people, the better they are back at you. And that's because those are characteristics of the Father. We're not told to be out here be angry and upset and yelling, because you're going to end up losing most of those. So Hebron, they come over and they're like, hey, Jacob, by the way, guys are on the way. Jacob's like, cool, we'll get set up. And yeah, I love that, he says this from the tower. So all these 4,000 men who are there under false pretense, you know what I mean? They're there under some other story. And they're looking at Esau like, wait, I thought you brought us here to fight. What do you mean you're here for her death? Like, they're probably as confused as everybody else, because they're like, we didn't hear this part of the story. We were told we're coming here to fight and kill people, but now we're all of a sudden we're here for a funeral. Like that's different. We didn't sign up for that. But I love how that rest of that conversation goes, where at 19 it says, "And thou dost hate me and my children forever, and there is no observing of the tie of brotherhood with thee." He's like, it's all extra. Oh, everything here is over the top. I mean, both of them going back and forth. It's just this big, giant, over the top. They're each trying to one up each other on who's more not right or who's more right. And obviously Esau's all in his feelings and he's emotional, and Jacob's just like, hey, I just shut the gate when you showed up. I don't know what this is all about, but just in case, you're not going to come in here and bother me and my people. Like, we're going to take a defensive posture. We didn't attack you first. I let you walk all the way up to the gate. We didn't have any big battle plans. And then we get into 38 right there at the beginning. And it says, and after all this, Judah spake to Jacob and said, bend the bow. So now you've got Esau's kids coming with their nonsense. And then you've got Jacob's kid was like, hey, I'm Judah. I'm the king dude. Remember? Yeah, we need to go to war. Why don't you go ahead and hit him with one of those real quick? And let's just solve this right now. Because, you are mourning your spouse's death. Yeah, we are a peaceful people. They're just trying to handle our business. Just get this over with. Like, if this is going to be a problem and you're going to always have this in the back of your mind, take them out. Let's just handle this and let's move on. We're righteous people. We're not trying to be dealing with this for the rest of our lives.
One last thing before we fully move away from 37, I apologize.
No, all good.
Do you guys think it? Not only do I think this is hilarious that you have this taunting dialogue between Esau and Jacob, but Esau he is being super extra to the point where verses 21 through 20. Yeah, like he's 20 through 23. Like, put this in Shakespearean language, and this is like Mercutio and Tybalt, right? Or Mercutio and whatever that guy would like. They're about to slay each other, but they're having this elaborate talk with each other beforehand, like this boasting, taunting fest first. And I just imagine the soldiers sitting there, like adjusting their armor, listening to this, going like, "Are we gonna fight or what? Like, what are these dudes doing?" Like they're sitting on the battlefield, like, "Come on, let's fight. What are we talking about?
Sword's getting heavy. Hurry up!"
Yeah, right. But it reminds me of David and Goliath.
Yeah,
that he's sitting out there. There's this yabbering back and forth before stones start flying. You know what I mean? And then here Judah steps up and goes, just bend the bow, slay the enemy. Yeah. And also, isn't it ironic that in verse 21 and 22, Esau's metaphors about the wolves and the lambs making peace and the lion and the ox making peace?
Yep.
Not until this happens will we be brothers. And I'm like, you mean like when the kingdom comes?
Boom.
Yep, I'm saying the exact
like
same
how
thing.
ironic is that?
Right.
Like it's almost like in a roundabout way saying, look, we're not brothers until kingdom come, or unless kingdom comes. Right. And let's just now there's some other examples here about the boar and the raven changing their nature. That doesn't happen in the kingdom, but I just think it's very ironic to me that he's talking about these specific concepts of like, no, until this type of violence is forever gone, you and I won't be brothers.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, every time I read certain chapters like this one in particular, all I can hear is Old English in my head.
Right.
Like, then know that I have loved thee and shall make peace with thee, brother.
Oh yeah, it's Monty Python. Like that first arrow strikes Esau, and he's like, merely a flesh wound. As he dies.
I don't know.
I was gonna say that first one knocked him back.
That was our first sniper in history, I think. So I don't know. I kind of wonder, like, is all of this back and forth going? Is he really trying to? Is he really hoping that he will? I don't know, give up or say, you know what? I didn't do you exactly fairly, so let me give you all this stuff or whatever. Is he hoping that his brother will do that so that they don't have to battle? Could that be the point of this? Is he? I think he's terrified in this moment, and he's trying to belabor this as much as possible to draw it out, hoping that his brother will go okay here, or something.
Or hopefully the 4,000 was intimidating enough. Is that not enough? That didn't scare you? You still just got that one bow that against all 4,000 of us? Dang it! I thought that would have worked.
Right. I don't know. That's just kind of what I see out of this. And I know we definitely got to get into 38 some more, but I had to look this up. Jonathan, you brought up Hebron, and seemed like something that needed to be looked up. So I looked up the meaning of Hebron, and essentially 4 things is what it means: community, colleague, friend, or alliance.
There it is.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Was it Caleb that took Hebron in the days of the Exodus? Anyway, that's sorry, but yeah, I'm fascinated because who was it that the Esau's sons implored of Adoron to go, the Aramean, to go rally all these mercenaries? Esau's hit first, Adoron's hit second.
Yep. Top dogs out. Done.
Done. Jacob's like, all right, guys, I'll let you guys handle the rest.
It's grunt work.
and sniper's a good analogy because he's in the tower and he had the high ground.
Yeah.
So his arrow would have went further.
Nice.
Yeah, it was nice that they had the tower. They basically had the citadel there that they could, fight from, considering the amount of foot soldiers that were there. And again, we've talked about this before in past recordings, but if those who are watching this, if you've never read A Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, if you really want to get some more insight into who Judah is, please go read that part.
Yeah,
he doesn't play. He's a warrior.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's fighting giants. He's fighting. He's taking care of business, and I think that's why he's going to. Is none of the other brothers, but Judah's going to his dad, saying, "You know what? Enough is enough. Go ahead and bend the bow, and let's take care of business." All right, I'm itching right now. I ain't killed me a man in 3 weeks. And,
yeah. What's up, Kyle?
All right. Okay. Purely, speculation or whatever. This is imaginary moments in Kyle's head. So welcome in.
Oh boy.
Okay. This statement right here. Bend thy bow, Father, and send forth thy arrows and cast down the adversary and slay the enemy. What comes to mind is when the Father says enough is enough and he just completely takes out the enemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our last days stuff, right? Does Yeshua look up at him and say, bend thy bow, Father? And then what you see is the physical representation of his covenant, his bow being bent in the sky that literally takes everyone out. His word. I don't know. It's just a cool thought. I don't know. Kyle's brain does stuff,
Okay. That's good. My brain is thinking of Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, the Battle of Minas Tirith when I read this. Like, it's not the same scale, but they're here fortified in this high city. And you have the plains filling up with warriors coming at them. And then Jacob, at the end of 37, Jacob tells, he has to tell everybody, like Gandalf runs around trying to tell everybody, we're at war, get ready, time to fight. I know you guys want peace, but now it's time. So he tells all the servants plus his family. He's telling everybody inside of this. I don't know how big this tower is, but to me, it's not the Leaning Tower of Pizza, right? So like this, to me, this is like more like a castle. This is probably a large structure,
right?
And to which he can host hundreds, if not 1,000+ people that live here with him. So he's a king over his own. He's a little kingdom here, right? And this is very medieval feeling.
Right.
It's very interesting because he seems to be to have a whole bunch of people around him inside the gates of this place where he's living, and even the servants are ready to fight. So like he, entire household, quote unquote, small nation, everyone's being rallied. It's time to do business.
Yeah, and I think, like, as we kind of see this battle start, it seemingly starts out of nowhere. Jacob's definitely the initiator, which at first I was kind of like, come on, Jacob, like, don't be the first one, kind of keep the peace. But sometimes it is, I need to initiate to keep the peace. I'm not here to be a peacemaker. I'm bringing the peace. Peace will be here now, and it's my choice. I'm making this be peace. I'm keeping this situation not going any further. And so, he eventually says, I understand what this is now. I understand there's no path moving forward other than a battle or a skirmish. I'm going to go ahead and take care of business. And I'm not going to leave any debate or any doubt. And my 12 sons are going to respect me, unlike your 12 sons or however many sons Esau has, how they're acting crazy. So you know what, real quick, 1, you guys saw that? Yeah, dad doesn't play. 2, Still don't play. Just in case you thought the first one was a fluke, I just want you to know I even placed them right and left because this wasn't a question. This was never a doubt in my mind. Now, I always find that kind of interesting, you know, whenever we look at the 12 patriarchs, and it's again, it's probably due to the monks and all the, you know, the stuff that we've seen throughout history and stuff like that. Like my brain always goes back to, oh, these are Bible dudes. You know, they're all wearing the long cloaks and they all walking around with Bibles and candles. You know, that's just how my brain naturally goes. And these guys are the complete opposite. These are the most manliest people that ever walked the earth. This dude just took out two people from whatever distance. It had to have at least been enough to you need an arrow, right? It wasn't,
Right.
you know, he didn't stab him. This was some distance. And I mean, he hit him pinpoint 2 death shots back to back. That's crazy. And then all the brothers, they step out and they're like, oh, okay, so it's time. It says then they divided themselves. Like it wasn't like Jacob had to go down and be like, all right, you 3 over here and you 3 over here. They just took care of business. Hey, Judah, Gad, let's go. Hey, Levi, you guys over there, you guys over there. And they just went to town. They just did what they were supposed to do by themselves, seemingly. I'm sure they had battle plans. I'm sure they had some practice or whatever, but they just did it. And then all of a sudden you see the other sons of Esau, they fled. I wasn't expecting that. That was the one where I was like, hey, at least if you got the big enough mouth, you got to die on that sword. You know, it's live by the sword, die by the sword. They were like, no, we're going to live with the big mouth and we're going to run with our jaws on the ground because we're tired. That just blows my mind. This whole battle was you came over here causing problems. I solved it. And then you want to run? Like, hey, I thought you wanted to fight. Let's go. You know what I mean?
Well,
But it shows you when you've come from a position of weakness, it truly will end in a position of weakness.
You know, Jonathan, real quick, when you were saying that, I was going back and reading over verse 8. You know, one of the things is they're in companies of 50. So it's not like there's a lot of them.
Right.
But I was just reading this, I was like, oh, this kind of makes sense. So we go into verse 8, towards the end of verse 8, it says, well, let's just read verse 8. Let's say, Simeon and Benjamin and Enoch, Reuben's son, went forth on the west side of the tower, and 50 men with them, and they slew of Edom and of the Horites 400 men, stout warriors. So these are who we're speculating as being probably these guys of extraordinary size, right, from the Horites. So
at
they
least good warriors.
yeah, they're at least good warriors. Possibility they're of fairly good sized guys here.
Yep.
And it says stout, and it says and 600 fled, and 4 of the sons of Esau fled with them. So it's almost like when the other guys see these big boys over here get taken out, they're like, we don't have a chance.
I don't want that smoke.
Seriously, it's like, I don't want to smoke at all. It's almost like, it's the old rule of thumb. You take out the biggest guy out of the group, and everybody else is like, we're done. I think that's what happens is you're seeing there, they take out the guys from Horit, and they're like, wait a minute, they just killed them? What chance do we? We're done, out. And then you see the sons, when the sons of Esau see it, they're kind of like the same. They're like, we're done. We were dumb, and let's leave.
Yep. I find that next little section of, after this takes place, this is this still speaks to the heart of Jacob.
Yep.
In this moment, and I think this is a beautiful thing. It says, and the sons of Jacob pursued after them to the mountains of Seir, and Jacob buried his brother on the hill which is in Aduram, and he returned to his house. So at this point, Jacob says, I'm done. He kills his brother, kills the other main dude, and then his focus goes to, I'm going to go take care of my brother in the right way. I'm going to honor him after his death. I'm going to go bury him. Yep. And then he returns to his house. And then even further, all the boys, the sons of Jacob pressed hard upon the sons of Esau in the mountains of Seir and bowed their necks so that they became servants of the sons of Jacob. What say y'all on that?
Well, I think if you read a little bit further, that's where you get to really see the heart of Jacob in verse 11. And they sent to their father to inquire whether they should make peace with them or slay them.
Yeah.
And as in Jacob sent word into us, or to his sons, that they should make peace, and that they made peace with them and placed a yoke of servitude upon them, so that they paid tribute to Jacob and to his sons always. And they continued to pay tribute to Jacob until the day that he went down into Egypt.
Yep.
So, yeah. So, I mean, Again, you see, he could have easily said, you know what, I can just get rid of all the problem right now. But again, I agree with you, Kyle, that he's even in death, he honored his brother, he buried him. And then with his boys, he's like, all right, Uncle's going to have some grace right now with y'all and let you live, but you're going to serve me for the rest of your lives.
Yeah, and I won't get into it a whole lot, but I think that this part right here, where that yoke of servitude was put upon them, so they paid tribute to his sons always, and then they continue to do so until Egypt. Honestly, I think this right here has a lot to do with why we see what is going on in modern day Israel, the land of Israel. I think that's why we see a lot of what we have going on down there. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay. I love, you guys' observation about verse 8, Simeon, Benjamin, and then Enoch, Reuben's son. Just another awesome concept. I don't know if we're told about I think we're told about the name of Reuben's sons in the book of, I can't remember if it's at the end of Genesis or not, but I just think that's fascinating. They're keeping Enoch's name alive. More than likely, they got a lot of story going along with that because they've got the writings of Enoch and Noah with them, as we're about to find out here in a couple chapters. But I imagine like Simeon just running through and breaking ankles, and then as the big boys fall, here comes Benjamin slicing their throat, or Enoch slicing their throat. Like so this is something that I'm actually going to be importing into the days of Noah, but not in a rated R way. But
are we going into a graphic novel now?
Yeah, come on, we need an adult version. Come on now.
It's not going to be in a rated R way, but you definitely were going to see one of the warriors in the family of Methuselah. He's going to be running through and breaking ankles through the battlefield as the giants are swinging at him. And then the other guys come in, and as they're starting to fall over, the other guys come in and take care of them. But basically, like I just imagine like Simeon just being, if Jacob is in the past chapter, if Jacob's referring to Esau like a boar who's unrestrained, who just runs into the spear, I think of Simeon just chomping at the bit to get at these dudes. You know what I'm saying? He's like, I don't even know some of these people. You know what I mean? Like, I knew of my nephews, and they're all being weird, and they're all wanting to die today. But like some of these other guys, you guys just imported yourselves to your own funeral. Like, and I will gladly be your hucklebearer. Like Simeon is just, I'm your hucklebearer. Jumps out the tower, just screaming, like ready to get to it. Like, I imagine this was quite the talk after this was over, as they're all having a meal later that night, talking about the victory on the battlefield. Right. But it's interesting though that, Jacob's doing Torah, he's burying the dead, and yes, it's showing specific reverence, if you will, to not just Esau's body, but also to Esau's sons. We see this is in stark contrast to Esau's sons wanting to kill Jacob and his sons and not spare the sons. But here, reverse this. Jacob and his sons are sparing Esau's children. Yep. Right. Yep. So, and of course, they may not know the conversation that was had with Esau and his sons that led up to this, because again, all they see from the tower is Esau's leading the battle charge.
That's right.
Right. So they may not know he's been put up to this by his children and was swayed by his children. So they're now showing mercy to the children, which still is showing the heart of Jacob. He's wanting them to repent. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't want them just to die. But I feel like had he known the full story, he would have killed them too, possibly, but maybe not. Maybe he is just showing them mercy. And I think this is interesting, this whole yoke of servitude, which we see, didn't this already happen with Isaac and the Canaanite kings earlier? Where they tried to attack Isaac and he overcame them, and then they paid him tribute. Yep. For a while. So now Jacob is getting tribute from Canaanite kings, plus the sons of Esau, and who knows what dealings they had. So this is like that movie Snatch that Guy Ritchie made back in like 2001, where the thieves are trying to get the diamond, but the diamond just gets swallowed by the dog, and then they're running around the whole movie trying to get it out of the dog, dealing with other gangsters. Ended up not getting the diamond at the end, and they spent all their time and effort from something they stole to only have it slip out of their grasp at the end. Like these are buffoons. Like I'm not saying like, and here at the end of this, they're shown incredible mercy, because I feel like if like Moses is getting the backstory from the angel explaining this, but I feel like in Jacob's day, had he knew all the backstory, they would have not have been shown this type of mercy.
Yeah.
So they got extremely lucky on the mercy of God, because also an angel of God could have just showed up to Jacob and said, nope, take them all out.
Yeah.
Yep.
All of them.
Well, think about this too, guys. When later on, when they're going into Egypt, or he's sending the boys in Egypt to get food, they got a lot of money on their animals, on the sack. So where all that money come from? All the tribute they were getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because they didn't show up with like a few coins to buy. They showed up with a lot of money.
Yep.
Each one of them to buy for each family. So I'm sure that had to be part of that tribute money that was coming in.
And look, this doesn't get spoken ever by people in church, but all these descriptions, I mean, I don't know what other thing to call it at this point. Like, he lives in a castle. He's got his own army. People of the land love him for his generosity. He's getting paid tribute by other kings. Jacob is a king.
Yeah, pretty much.
It doesn't call him that directly, but he's not just a king, in my opinion. I mean, he's already passed on his priesthood to Levi, but he was a Melchizedek, and now he's just a king.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the language you don't hear that about Jacob.
And an expert archer.
Yeah, and apparently he's no joke. I would imagine if you made this a movie, the opening scene is a wild boar running through some bushes, and then the camera zooms into the tower way off in the distance, and it's Jacob and his boys going, "Yeah, I got that one, go." And then they tell the servants, go grab it and sell it, but we're not going to eat it.
Right.
But they're just up there, like, just doing practice from the tower, just spot shot. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and you talked about that yoke earlier, and remember the sons looked at Esau and said, "Why have you allowed him to put this yoke on you? Why are you such a weak man to have this yoke on your neck?" And then now look, he's like, "You know what? We're going to put a yoke on you, sons." And so it's funny how that literally came full circle. Going back to
true.
Their own words, they had to eat crow a little bit, and I think it's hard to deal with, but I know throughout scripture, what does it tell us to do to our enemies? You treat them well, you love your enemies, you take care of people, so the spirit and the love of God can truly be transformative in their minds, and you show them a different way. Well, these boys were ready to die. They ran, so they were weak, but in their pursuit, they knew, hey, if we go into battle, we might die. But then to come out of it and say, we not only did we lose, and in that situation with Simeon, they were 1 for 8. There was 50 of them, and they killed 400. That means each one of them got 8. If you just average it out, that's a battle. That's Medal of Honor, each person individually, one by one. Everybody won the war essentially. And when you look at that yoke being put back on them, they're like, and we still get to be your servants. Like, you're not going to kill us after all that. So, man, what does that mean? Like, so maybe we should follow you. Maybe we should be like the people in Hebron. Like, you are gentle. You are dealing with us appropriately. Like, maybe we've been told a story. Maybe we were dumb. Hopefully that's their heart mentality at the end of all that. And then, and then we get into, 15 through the end, and it's just, here's all the names of the kings that we did pronounce the first time through the video. So if you guys go back and watch that, they're all read out for you. Joe killed it, I think, or I read it, or something happened. But
yeah, that's such a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. They can either be under the yoke of Jacob the easy way or the hard way.
Yeah.
Yep.
And these boys chose the hard way. And also, it shows the heart of Jacob with his first bending of the bow. Apparently, with that type of skill, he could have taken out one of the sons of Esau first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're trying to do some damage to somebody, what does the mob always do? They go after your family first.
Mm-hmm.
They want to teach you a lesson by causing you great pain.
Yeah, I thought it was mercy.
Yeah, but Jacob's like, nope, I'm taking out your dad first, and I'll show you guys mercy. He could have killed all of his sons and let Esau ride in pain. You know what I mean? But instead, no, let's just get your dad out of his misery, because this has been a long time coming. Good
stuff. Did you guys have anything to add about the kings of Edom that's in the next section here? There was one thing. I'm sorry. One thing I did. Okay. There was one thing, though, that I wanted to bring up about the battle being fought. This covenant was a covenant that was made not just between the two boys and their dad. Like, the Most High was involved in this covenant, right?
Yep.
Because there was a if and then, right? It's if you go against this covenant, whoever goes against it is the one who's going to get destroyed, right? The only way you can guarantee something like that is if the Most High is involved in it, right? That's the only way you can guarantee that. So with that said, I find it interesting. I'm not surprised by how many men were taken out by these guys, because let's be honest, I don't think the guys had to lift a single finger. They could have, an angel could have gone before them and taken everybody out, because again, this was a covenant that was made with the Most High as well. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think they were empowered to do what they did, for sure. So anyway, okay, 17.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the math with the sons of Esau. Do we have a place in here that tells us the names of the sons of Esau, the 4 sons?
I do not remember.
I don't remember either.
Because I'm trying to look in Genesis for a cross-reference. I can't remember either, but I'm trying to see here in verse 17. Well, I should start in 15. It talks about the sons of Edom paid the yoke of servitude to Jacob and his boys. And then verse 15, these are the kings that reigned in Edom before there reigned any king over the children of Israel to this day. I mean, this is just Genesis 36, verse 31 through 37, I believe. And then also it's in First Chronicles chapter 1. And it's almost like verbatim the same language as far as going down through this king's list. And so I was trying to figure out, in verse 16, Balak, is that the immediate descendant of Esau? Is that one of his 4 sons, Balak? Because if we can figure that out, then that means Jobab, who's the book of Job.
Well, it does say Balak, the son of Beor.
Okay, so if Beor, first generation son of Esau, Balak second, Jobab is 3rd generation. Now, this is if it's the sons of. Either way, we have approximately 100, maybe 150 years, depending on their lifespan, where Jobab is now ruling. Job is ruling. This is Job of the book of Job. For anyone that's listening and hasn't seen us talk about this previously, this is Genesis 36. This is the son of Zerah. It's called it's spelled with an A here in the Jubilees account. Same person. This is also expressed to you in the book of Job, chapter 42, verse 17. In the Septuagint, specifically gives you the genealogical history of who Job is and how he's one of the kings of Edom. So, guys, this means that just a few rulers away from Esau, after this tribute is happening, is you have this extremely righteous, Torah observant believer in Job takes over in this region, or at least takes over as one of the kings of Edom. I mean, to me, that's like, what are we to conclude? Did the sons of Esau learn from this? What is going on here? Like, who got to Job? Who raised up Job in righteousness to where he's now a righteous king, honored by Yahweh? Because his descendancy is not looking good. Like these boys, all these boys are just, as the book of Judges would say, absolutely worthless.
Yeah.
Right. But here we have Job come along, who is of the utmost worth. So what happened here? You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to piece together this back. Like I said last time, like, I love the backstory of all this. I love the surrounding context. I mean, we're also talking about during this battle, Moab and the Ammonites, they're enemies of Israel, where we see them being friends of Israel, that God, in the children of Israel being led out of Egypt, God says, don't attack the Moabites and the Ammonites, because they're doing their own thing, and they commended in Deuteronomy chapters 2 and 3 for taking out their own giants. So like, there's a shift. It's like there's a revival that happened somehow, some way.
Yeah.
There's a shift of these descendants just a generation or so later, to where they're ruling with righteousness, specifically Job, and all of Job's friends who come to show up are all trying to honor Yahweh, although some of them misguided with their advice. They're still trying to honor Yahweh. They're calling Job out. They're being a little Torah terrorists, but they're calling Job out for what they think is sin in Job's life and how he's not honoring God. So that means they're trying to honor God. None of them show up and say, "Why are you worshiping Yahweh? Come worship, Baal with us." Right? So
Right.
no, like these are from Arabia. So these are all also Ishmael descendants. So all I'm trying to say is, this is how many years between Jacob going to Egypt and the Israelites coming out? Have you guys ever done the math?
Mm-mm. No.
It's
Not directly.
around 200.
Yeah, so about 200. That's what I was gonna say.
So how old is Moses when he brings the children of Israel? He's 80.
Yep.
Okay. And if this king's list that's being given to us in this Jubilees account, if this is just a couple generations down from the death of Esau, that makes perfect sense within that 200-year time span, that in the region of Edom, while the children of Israel are in Egypt and then go into servitude and go into slavery, Job is ruling with righteousness in this area. Who trained up Moses' father-in-law,
Yeah.
who was considered the high priest of Midian and worshiped God?
Yep.
Who trained him how to be a priest? And he was an old man too. He was the father-in-law of Moses. He's older than 80.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who trained him up?
Yeah.
Right? And he's in the land of Midian, which was north, which is the territory of Reuben later. Like he's way north of Edom and Mount Seir. So there's a whole I'm just trying to paint the picture for the listener, guys. There's a whole region of people in this territory that
Right.
I'm led to suspect that a lot of these events that we're seeing had a lasting impact that's not specifically articulated, with people coming to faith in Yahweh and walking in righteousness with Yahweh. Also, something where else we're going to get in chapter 47. I'm not trying to steal thunder from future episodes, but just bringing in this context here with Moses' father. What was his name? Aram. What was Moses' father's name?
Yeah. Aram.
Aram. Yeah, he was a righteous man.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, he went back and lived in the area of Canaan while the majority of the Israelites were in Egypt. And for some reason, that doesn't seem to be articulated. If he comes back to Egypt around the time of Moses' birth, which then suddenly he's found himself with the gates of Egypt locked and a new Pharaoh that doesn't know Joseph, and they're trying to kill all the Hebrew babies and all this kind of stuff. And so he finds himself in that bad situation there. But for the majority of his, not in his life, but for the majority of that time period, he's in Canaan. Remember, because he stayed after Joseph's death?
Mm-hmm.
So why did he stay? Who did he stay with?
Right.
Who's friendly to a righteous Levite that's going to train up Moses properly, right? There's people that I'm getting at, like there's a whole, it seems to me there's a whole back area from Edom all the way up to Midian. There's like a whole swath of righteous rulers and kings that are faithful to Yahweh, that are not antagonistic to Israel anymore, that are friendly to Levites. And it's just, to me, it's like this incredible evidence for the scriptures that we have, it's particularly Jubilees. It's a spotlight on Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's a spotlight on this just specific people that follow God. But there's a whole bunch of other people that God's working his Holy Spirit into their hearts and causing righteousness to spring up in other places. Through all these lasting, like the children of Keturah, the children of Ishmael, even the children of Esau.
Yep.
Like they're all being filtered out into this region to have a positive effect, so that there's righteousness is not dead in this area just because the Israelites went into Egypt. So sorry, I'll stop ranting. It's just to me, this is so fascinating, because the average person is taught in Christianity that the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were like this particular group of people, those 75 people that went to Egypt. They were the only people that knew Yahweh in the whole earth.
Right.
They were the only people doing righteousness in the whole earth. And the covenant that was given to them has only been given to the children of Israel who came out of Egypt later, and that was given to anybody else, and nobody else is following the covenant. Nobody else is doing the law of God. And all of that is absolutely false.
Yeah, we have these few good guys, and everybody else all over the whole world is bad guys. Yeah.
Well, and I think the reason we get the spotlight, and Sean, I agree with you. I think there is a huge spotlight, but rightfully so. These are the patriarchs. These are the guys that, God
Christ
and the
is
angels.
going to come out of this lineage.
Yeah. that, and then God and the angels literally spoke with, moved with, created covenants with. He didn't create a covenant with one of Job's kids. He created a covenant with Abraham. So that's why we're going to get that information. But it's the work of Abraham that caused an Isaac and Ishmael. And yeah, Ishmael may have went off and kind of did his own thing, being the 12 princes, but that's because of what Abraham did. So yeah, if we spotlight Abraham, then we have to assume all of Ishmael and his kids and all of Jacob and Isaac and his kids followed that, because that's why we're going to get the spotlight on the father. And same thing with Jacob. Hey, Jacob was an awesome dude, and he spared the children of Esau. Well, because Jacob was an awesome dude, you can then now filter that into everybody else's story down the line. And yeah, you're going to get a Job, you're going to get a so-and-so, you're going to get a Jethro, because, well, yeah, that impact continued to go on. Now, if Jacob decided, you know what, all these sons, kill them, we're out of here, we're done with this, and yeah, it is going to be about me, I am the spotlight. But no one had that approach. Abraham, he had many workers, many slaves, many people joined him. He was never like, it's the Abraham story. It's, hey, as many of y'all want to come in, sorry about the circumcision thing, I know that's kind of weird, we got to kind of add that to the story, but hey, let's all get in on this covenant. And everybody was like, yes, we want to be an Abraham person. And they all kind of followed in with that. And so, yeah, I love your point that this wasn't an isolated thing. We get an isolated story because it's like learning about the pastor. If you learn about the pastor, generally, you're going to learn about the church. If you learn about Abraham, you're going to learn about everybody who followed him. So I think that's what the spotlight's for. But yeah, there has to be a bigger impact. This has to have grown tremendously. And that's why you have so much opposition. You're not going to get everybody's trying to come against Israel if Israel's 10 people. You know what I mean? Why would you have all, like you said earlier, all these armies and all these factions? Let's come against those most high God people. There's 10 of us, dude. Just tell us to leave and we'll walk away. This was a big deal. It was growing, just like in the time of Yeshua. It was something that was, getting fostered and growing.
Yeah, the Melchizedeks, from whom we see them interacting with in Jubilees 13, what impact did they have on the people around them? And of course, Levi is given the priesthood over Israel right here, so his sons are going to have descendancy. And this is where Aaron comes along later. But when he's ministering at Bethel, as Jubilees 32 talks about, what impact did he have on the people that come forward? Right? Malachi 2 says he's turned people back from iniquity because the law of the Lord was in his mouth. The word of the Lord was in his mouth. So, it means he's talking to people. He's actively evangelizing and interacting with people and teaching them God's wisdom, and administering his priesthood in a faithful way, like he should. I guess I don't know what he's doing here at the tower at this point, fighting in this battle. Maybe his priesthood was already aged out, and one of his sons took over. It's interesting how to consider this, or maybe he just had, at this point, he's already just gone in house, and he's no longer ministering at Bethel. Now he's just going to be at the tower, or maybe they just called him back for this fight after word spread. I don't know, but the point is, he's there fighting too. He's not in Bethel ministering the priesthood right now, so that's fascinating to me. Yep. But yeah, they're clearly impacting the people around them. There clearly seems to be, in the same way that we see in the United States, righteous people run around trying to follow God, although their language is very often misguided and how they talk about it. But you got people trying to do what's right and follow God amidst the gay pride parade down the street.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Amidst the Planned Parenthoods killing babies on the corner. So, I feel like it's that same vibe back then. The next nation over, they want to kill all of you. But for some reason, we haven't attacked each other yet. And there's this weird stalemate while everyone just lives their lives. And it's just fascinating to me how, no matter all the trappings and the description of this ancient world, basic human interaction is very similar to what we experience today.
Yep.
Nothing new under the sun.
Exactly. All right. So at the end of this chapter, we've got all the kings listed, all that kind of good stuff. And then that kind of, that part of the story seems to kind of come to an end. And then when we get over in chapter 39, now we're going to kind of switch subjects a little bit. It says, and Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. And then we start talking about Joseph here. So Joseph was 17 years when they took him down into the land of Egypt. Potiphar, the eunuch, Pharaoh, all that stuff. We got all this stuff going on. Now, this is one of those chapters where generally you see a lot more information, a lot more detail in the book of Jubilees than you do in Genesis. However, there's they each have their own unique information, but you do get a lot of details in Genesis that you don't get in this one here. So I think it's amazing to have these two stories put together, or these two tellings of the story put together. It can give you a more full version of what actually transpired in that time frame. But I wanted to come down here in verse 6. So, obviously Potiphar's wife is trying to get at him. She thinks he's pretty, right? But there's an interesting statement that's made here. It says, but he did not surrender his soul. So I want to get y'all's thoughts on that. And then it says he remembered Yahuwah and the words which Jacob his father, and here we go, used to read from amongst the words of Abraham, that no man should commit fornication with a woman. So what was being read? What do you guys think to all of that I just said?
Well, I'll jump in. There's a little bit of fun there, and Kyle's mentioned how she looked upon him fondly. I love at the end of 5 there. It's like, and she lifted up her eyes and she loved him. Like, man, she was ready for whatever it was. Like, you don't know any backstory, you don't know nothing about this dude, but you're like, I love this man right here. I don't know what this is, but I like it. But it's his resolve that's so what she liked about him was his character. What she liked about him was his countenance. Yeah, he may have been a pretty man. He may have had his his stuff about him. He may have his beard trimmed up or whatever. But I think what really draws people to you is your faith in the Father and how you carry yourself. And I think he carried himself with all the integrity that he shows throughout the rest of the story. And so when he comes around, he's like, yeah, I didn't surrender my soul. And you know what that is to the average person? That's attractive. Hey, this is a man's man, but also can hold his cards. That's a man's man, but he can keep his hands in his pockets. You know what I mean? And I think that's really what pushes that issue is now, well, why is this not working? This works all the other times. What's up with this dude? Now I'm really curious about him. And yeah, the words that he's reading, that's amazing. This is pre-Torah, pre-Jubilees. This is before the angels on the mountain with Moses. All of a sudden he's like, writing, where they had writings supposedly, they had stone tablets, and the first time God ever spoke was he had to write his finger on some rocks and make it happen. And there's like, oh no, we had that already. We knew all this. Yeah, we read this as a kid. This was bedtime stories.
Yeah, real quick, the thing I love about this too is the fact that when it talks about in verse 6, it says, but he did not surrender his soul. He remembered Yahuwah and the words which Jacob his father used to read from amongst the words of Abraham. This goes straight into training up a child.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This goes straight into training up your child in the ways that he should go. And the fact that, when we read about Joseph, and we only read about him in the 66, the canon of 66, we want to read about him in the story of Genesis. A lot of times we speculate because that's the only story we have about him. We think, oh, he was 17 years old. He was arrogant. The father's trying to humble him. That's why he gets sold off to Egypt. And guys is really trying to, no, Joseph was a humble 17-year-old, and that's hard to come by, especially these days. This is a kid who I think is the most focused 17-year-old you've ever seen. Think about this now. He's away from his father's house. He has all the excuse in the world right now to do whatever he wants, and nobody's going to know it or see it. Think about that. He's just been wronged by his brothers. He's probably got a little chip on his shoulder. He's got some hurt he's going to deal with. And we see that played out in the story later where the father brings in restoration between him and his brothers and everything. But, this speaks a lot of volume about Joseph and about who he is. In that he's like, even if nobody else sees this, even if the master of the house never knew about this, I remember the words of my father. I remember those, and I'm going to cherish those. I'm going to hold on to those, and I'm not going to give my soul. I'm not going to give myself over to this woman, And then, and also I want to give another plug for the 12 patriarchs. Is that when you go back and you read the story? Now, if you want more to the story,
it's a lot. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this woman was cray.
Yeah.
Like we get the little bit here to, oh, he's so lovely. Look at that 6-pack he's got. No. This woman was obsessed with Joseph. So if you go back and read the testament of the 12 patriarchs, do yourself a favor. If you want to have even more of the story and more of an understanding of what's taking place here, And actually, when we read the story of the 12 patriarchs, his story in there, I think this is where he's praying to God. He's like, God, you got to get me out of this situation, because this woman pursued him for a long time. This wasn't like a few little flirts here and there. This was like
for a year, for a whole year.
Yep.
And finally, I think Joseph got to the point was like, I am a man. I really need you to get me out of this situation.
Oh, is it to the point where he actually didn't drink a drink because she had poisoned it with some sort of aphrodisiac?
Wow.
Yeah,
wasn't she whispering to him in prison too? Like even after he was in prison, she was still.
She was like, "I'll get you out of here if you just be my lover." Yeah, she was.
She was seriously Fatal Attraction 2.0.
This is what the kids call. She was down bad.
So anyway, my point is, he prayed to the Father to get him out of the situation, and the way that the Father got him out of the situation is, don't worry, son, I'll get you as far away from her as I can. I'll put you in jail.
It's not what I meant.
I mean, you think about it, it's like, look, he's praying fervently, Father, just get this crazy woman away. He's like, don't worry about it, son, I got you. But the cool part is you never see Joseph question that.
Yep.
You don't see him, woe is me. I think he was actually relieved, because he's like, I'm away from this crazy woman. And by the way, and that's where God's like, don't worry about it. I'm going to send you to prison, but I got a plan. And trust the plan. And by the way, you're going to be the ruler over the prison. You're going to be the guy in charge of it. So, so kudos to Joseph for doing what he was doing.
I don't think that they had the book of Proverbs in the writings of Abraham or in the words Abraham read to Joseph as a child. But I do think that it aptly describes why in verse 6 Joseph says he did not surrender his soul. Because in Proverbs 5, it talks about the same thing. The whole chapter is about not relenting to the adulterous woman. And then if you go down here to verse 20 through 23, it says, why be captivated, my son, by an adulteress? Or why would you embrace the bosom of a stranger? For a man's ways are before the eyes of the Lord, and the Lord examines all his paths. The iniquities of a wicked man entrap him. The cords of his sin entangle him. He dies for lack of discipline, led astray by his great folly. So I think that not just in a spiritual sense, he's worried about his soul being surrendered, but also the common sense of, hey, word's going to get out. This girl, if I give in to this woman, this woman's so crazy, I can't trust her to even keep this quiet. Like, the word's going to get out and I'm going to die. Like, they're going to kill. Why wasn't he killed when he was accused of the grape, of the R word? Like, I don't know. Unless Potiphar was suspicious of, well, did he really do it? Let's just put him in jail. I think putting him in jail was like protecting him from this woman. Because she, like you said, she's on that fatal attraction bent. And the end of her path is her killing him, because she ain't gonna let anybody else have him.
Right.
Like this woman was unhinged to the nth degree, to the point where she's trying to invoke magic in order to get him to sleep with her.
Yeah, I personally don't think Potiphar believed the situation. Right. Otherwise, he'd be done.
He knew his wife. I'm sure. Yeah. I promise you, this lady, this behavior wasn't the only time she exhibited.
It wasn't a one-off thing here.
Yeah. Right. This wasn't a closeted behavior. If she's openly making comments to other people about him, Potiphar knew who his wife was.
Yeah. Well, and that 12, the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, it goes into that whole conversation where, like, hey, Jacob, me and you together, we'll go kill Potiphar, and then we'll take over, and we can get him out of the way. And you're just like, Joseph, yeah, thank you. And it's like, gee, you're taking this to a whole nother level. This isn't a spring fling. This is I want to be married to you, and I want to change my whole life around. You're like, goodness gracious.
Oh yeah, I'll take your last name and everything. Just do this.
Right, and then it's no wonder that
what is your last name?
Sorry, Joseph, God person. But you do see, like, where it does get to the extreme where Joseph's like, I don't know what else to do, but I think in verse 10 says you break through the door. He's like, I'm just got to get out of here. I'm at the point where I no longer in a physical sense can even stop what's happening. Because at a certain point we all have options, right? You all can say no, walk away, all that kind of stuff that we're taught to do. But in this situation, Joseph's like, I live here and I work here all day, every day. I can't just leave. I'm a slave. I can't say no. I'm a slave. So I something has to change. And I love that in his heart and in his mind, he's like, the Father, into your hands, like, whatever you want to do with me, but you see what's going on down here, right? And I love that he trusted in the Lord through all that. He didn't try to go on by his own ways and go snitch. He didn't try to, trip her one day so she breaks her ankle, and like solves the problem. He didn't sneak anything weird into her food just to like, hey, maybe if I can get her out of the picture. He just said, it's
He
not
didn't
my
tell her-
battle.
He didn't tell her he was gay.
He didn't say that. He's like, well, I might be happy.
A cool point I like here is, okay, he broke the door down, right? All right, verse 10. He broke the door down. He break through the door. All right. And the Egyptian saw the garment of Joseph and the broken door, and heard the words of his wife, and cast Joseph into prison, into the place where the prisoners were kept, whom the king imprisoned.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is not regular street guys where they go. This
Right.
is
This is your
this
white
is-
collar.
right. These are hey, we're going to toss you in here, get you a little punishment until we find out that you sure enough did something bad, and then we're going to take you out. Right? We learned that about the baker and the cup holder or whatever, whoever those two guys are. Right?
Yeah.
And but the other guy was restored back to his position. Right? So he's kept in this white collar prison, if you will. But let's not forget about the door that's put here. He break through the door, and the Egyptians saw the garment on the floor and the broken door. If you're breaking out, the door breaks that direction, not in, right?
Right.
So she made the accusation, but the door's broken out that way. This
Right.
dude ain't stupid. He didn't get to that position he's in by being dumb.
Mhm.
So yes,
Right.
I absolutely think that Potiphar was trying to figure out how to deal with this situation, protect his own image, at the same time protecting Joseph.
Yeah. Well, we go to going back to the 12 patriarchs, Testament of 12 patriarchs. There's a part in the story where Potiphar's actually beating Joseph because he's asking. He says, "Joseph, are you? No, you're not the slave guy. Who are you? Oh, I'm
Mhm.
nobody.
Right.
No, you're lying to me." And he actually beats him.
That's
So it's
I was
not
making a
beyond-
joke.
What's
Sorry.
that? Oh, that's okay.
That's why I was joking earlier about, but what is his last name? Because he refused to tell anybody who he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, "Who's your daddy? Nobody. Nobody you would know. No, don't worry about
Yeah.
it."
Because as we've just been talking about, his daddy was somebody.
Mhm.
He
Oh,
should have
so
said,
that
they
would-
know if Potiphar would have known who he really was, he probably would have shipped him back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Changed the
He probably
game.
been like, you know what, you don't belong here, and you need to go back over there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Probably would have shipped him back and restored him as much as he could. He probably would have set all kinds of stuff with him.
Mhm.
You know?
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's the whole time. It just seems like Joseph is honorably protecting his brothers
Yep.
Yeah.
who betrayed him. Like love covers a multitude of sin. Like
Yep.
He
He
just-
he wouldn't
the whole
rat him
time.
out.
And I think I think Benjamin comments about that in the Testament of Benjamin,
Mm.
about how his brother was so righteous. And anyway,
Yeah, so you get this whole situation with him dealing with Potiphar's wife, and all the positive that's happened. So Joseph learned from the best. Joseph had the good upbringing. We read that earlier, that he was being read material from Abraham. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he knew some stuff, and he knew how to act and interact. And it was, hey, we don't say bad against our family. We don't do evil against our own people. And you don't do evil against anybody. He served Potiphar as if that was his righteous ruler, and these are Egyptians, these are foreign people to him, and he's serving them as if that's his own people. And so Joseph really shows a lot of character through all of this. He's one protecting home, taking care of business where he's at. And I think along the way that God's putting him and moving him where he needs to be. Hey, you're going to be in this situation. All of this is for a purpose. Now we know the end game. It's all about Joseph saves the known world with food, right? That's the end of it, and that's going to be the full culmination of his dream with the wheat and all that kind of stuff of the family finally kind of bowing back down to him. He
Right.
serve, and then eventually that all comes back. There's a full restoration there, but he's in this prison situation, white collar or not. He's like, okay, I'm in charge. It says Yahuwah gave Joseph favor and all of that, and then what does he do? Dreams. He's like, where do I remember this? I remember I had two of my own dreams, and now I got these guys asking me to interpret dreams. And he gives them the pump the brakes. He's like, back up a little bit. I'm not here to interpret dreams. but I will inquire of the Lord because
Right.
he interprets dreams. I'm not going to write a special book, in our modern world today. I'm not going to be the dream interpreter. I'm not going to tell you this means that and this means that.
That wasn't his gifting in the spirit?
No. This was a gift from the Spirit in this temporary moment. And so, he gets an opportunity to display God's awesomeness. It wasn't about Joseph in this moment. And I'm sure these men, they were like, oh, you serve a real and true God. And that's where I think that story kind of lends to is it's always kind of easy to give Joseph Joseph, he's the interpreter of dreams. He's the one with the multicolored coat. He's the one who won over the people. But what did Joseph do? What did he say? This ain't about me. I don't want any credit in this world. I just want to give all the credit to the Most High, even in prison. At his lowest place that he's been, he still only points his finger in one place.
Wow. Good stuff, man.
Did you guys, the translation y'all are using, does it verse 7, does it tell you the definition of LL wa Abir?
Let's see, verse 7. And Joseph remembered these words and refused to lie with her, huh? Or are you in chapter 40?
Sorry, guys, I'm already in 40.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. That's the same question.
Yep.
And let's see. Yeah. On the right-hand side, it says LLYIB, whatever you just said.
Mm-hmm.
God, the mighty one of God. This is a peculiar amplification of the Hebrew
ruler, the mighty one of God. The mighty one of God.
Bow the knee.
Bow the knee. Yeah. Mighty one of God. May be a technical term for great magician, referencing Acts 8:10 is the definition or the explanation they have on the right-hand side of it here.
LL Abir. Oh, it's Abir. This is Abir. So Abir is the word for God, a different word for God in Egyptian. But this is transliterated from the Greek to the English. So right. I was trying to look up, Google it and see what Abir was saying, but I guess it's just another word for God. Mm-hmm. The reason why I'm asking, because, it seems as if in verse 5, it says, we shall not find a wise and discreet man as this man, for the Spirit of the Lord is with him. So are they talking about the same Lord that Joseph worshipped? I know your translation uses Yahuwah, but I'm not sure that word was used by the Egyptians, so I just don't know exactly.
I would say that message was coming across clear. I think after him dealing with Potiphar, after him being in prison, after him interpreting the dreams, I think all along the way, Joseph's saying nothing but Yahuwah, God, whatever the name that he was using back then. I bet you he was just pushing that so far home where that's why they were like, hey, let's go talk to Joseph, because him and his God, whatever that situation is, and they probably used the name that he gave him. I think that started to become more of a common thread. And even Pharaoh's like, well, we tried to call on the alligator God and we tried to call on the sun God, and that stuff didn't work. What is the name of your God? Yeah, that dude, that guy, whoever he is, that stuff works. That's real. And I think in Joseph's mind, he's just getting confirmation after confirmation to continue proclaiming. He's like, every time I talk about God, I win. So I'm just going to keep doing that. And so he had his 2 dreams. The 2 guys in the prison got the 2 dreams. Pharaoh now has 2 dreams. Joseph's like, I get it. I see now why I'm here. Pharaoh's still kind of picking up along the way, but Joseph got it. And I think they were using his name because it made it sound like whatever Joseph's about, him and his people, his land, his God, whatever they need to do, let them have it. Give them the best of what they need, because that stuff is real.
Okay. Yeah. So I forgot about this. In Testament of Joseph, chapter 3, verse 10, I declared unto her the words of the Most High, and she would happily return, if haply she would turn from her evil lust. So even to the woman trying to entice him, he is speaking the words of God, the words of Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
So that would lead me to believe he's also speaking to other people about Yahweh in his life.
I think he couldn't stop. It was pouring out of him.
Yeah. I think they knew who his God was.
Yeah. I forgot about that part.
Which is, to be honest with you, it's kind of crazy to think about, because you think about all these great rulers who would have you bend the knee to their God because that's what they do. And how dare you have another God other than the one I serve?
Ancient Egypt, especially. I mean, this ain't a place to play around with with foreign gods. Like they had their own pantheon, and every god had a purpose, and there was so much mysticism and superstition involved, and like yeah, and it just makes you wonder, like, if this famine thing and the dream that Joseph received and his ability to interpret, and for them to actually say, well, man, no one has this kind of wisdom and spirit like this guy. I think it even says in Genesis that he had the spirit of God in him, that they was recognized by the Pharaoh, that Joseph had the spirit of God in him. It just makes you wonder, like, the Pharaoh probably knew about the gods of other nations.
Right.
But again, this goes back to my earlier rant, like how much of them knew about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Right.
And how deep does this go? Because the Melchizedek in Genesis 14 clearly is in the region from where the 9 kings came to battle, and they all know each other. Like they know that there's an entire priesthood serving a specific god over there that are called Melchizedeks, but yet the battle of the 9 kings is happening right next to them at Sodom. And it just seems like they would know. And again, if Josephus is correct, they did know. Like they emphatically knew that land was given to Shem and via Abraham, or be passed down to Abraham as a descendancy. So therefore, the king of Egypt, whoever this is at this time, it just makes you wonder, like, what other politics and religious thought did he understand of his neighboring countries around him?
So I'm sorry, Joe, real quick.
Yeah.
I personally think that they had an idea that he could be part of that whole family, but then again, he also could just have been an old servant of theirs,
Right.
because even the servants, had the same God or whatever. So I think that's why they probably. I think that's probably why they still protected him in these higher positions, even though they weren't sending him back. Right? It's like, okay, just in case, because we don't want to upset that God, because we know we've heard about this dude.
Yeah.
We don't want to mess that up. So
we just heard about Philistia and Kittim sending a bunch of warriors to go die at the hand of Jacob at some tower. So I don't know. And this guy kind of resembles Jacob a little bit. Like he kind of strikes me from a certain
this weird
light.
Blue thread. I don't know what that's about.
Right. Like what? It just makes you wonder. And he's talking about the same God, but yet he's not telling them who his family is. It's just interesting that they would have to be like logical deduction. There's only a few people he's coming out of in the Levant area. So, and again, if these are just immediate descendants of the days of like Abraham to the tower, all these people are just a generation or two away from the story of the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody's kind of like lingering on the know of like I don't know. I don't want to get too much into it to waste time, but there's so much here. There's so much here, guys.
Oh yeah. So Sean, when you're talking about earlier about, them knowing of probably Yahuwah, this is my personal take on it. I think that there's gods all over the place, right? There's gods all over Egypt. There's these pagan gods everywhere. And I think the problem is that there was a mutual respect. Oh, you serve the God of Ra, you serve the God of this, and oh, you serve that God of Yahuwah, or whatever they would say. I think they kind of put a majority of them on the same playing field. And I think that's why in Genesis, when the followers during the time of Moshe are taking them out of Mitzrayim, he says, "You will know who I am. I am the El of Els." So this is, and I think there was a little bit of a surprise because a lot of these gods were territorial. And the surprise was, your God can go over there. Your God isn't just anchored to this one area. Your God can actually go over that, So I think that's why he says, when I brought you out with a mighty hand, he's making a statement to everyone. No, I am. I know all you guys worship your weird stuff and all these other Elohims, but I am the El of those Elohims, and I'm going to prove to you who I am. And so that's why I think even with Pharaoh, when Pharaoh's giving him kudos, I don't think Pharaoh's putting the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob on the same, or he's putting them on the same level and not elevating him as the El.
Right.
And because if he actually knew him as the El, he might change his ways a little bit. My second point to this, or my second point to make, and it just hit me a few minutes ago. I was looking at it. in chapter 40, when we go into, I believe it starts in verse 9, it talks about, and Pharaoh's kingdom was well ordered. I'll wait for you to get there, Kyle. Right there. There you go. And there was no Satan and no evil person therein. This kind, we talk about Joseph's life, mirroring that of Yeshua. This almost sounds like this is kingdom talk when Christ returns and Satan's locked away for that season. He can't do anything. There's no influence. There's no nothing. And so right after that, when the new Pharaoh comes in, when Joseph's passed away, we see that Satan is now basically loosened to go and do what he's going to do. And then all this is leading up to the children actually being drawn away from all of that, from that season of Satan, to go into the promised land and the kingdom that's coming. So anyway, that was just going through my brain a little bit. If you had any thoughts on that at all, but I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting.
I have a question about that before y'all respond to that. Specifically, this idea of it says there was no Satan and no evil person. Well, Satan meaning adversary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there was no adversary, is there literally no other gods that are there at that time? Has the message gone forth enough from Joseph that Yah was received by the Pharaoh? I mean, yeah, I get it. Wood and stone statues, there's nothing to them. I get that. But they're gods that they used to worship. Is that a possibility? Because those would be adversarial to the Most High. Like, are they not in the land anymore? What are y'all's thoughts? I'm sorry.
I'm trying to remember there's a documentary about ancient Egypt and the timeline, and I can't remember what it's called. Lindsay introduced me to it. It was literally the first thing we watched on our first date ever was this documentary. Right. So it was hilarious because
perfect match.
Yeah, it was a biblical documentary about the challenged historical timeline of ancient Egypt. And one of the things about it was if this new archaeological perspective is correct, it makes perfect sense with the biblical timeline and Joseph being the ruler over a monotheistic kingdom. So this is why modern Egyptologists want to reject this evidence for this timeline of ancient Egypt, because they don't want the Bible to be true. They don't want the story of Joseph to be true. In addition to them thinking they found the tomb of Joseph and some other stuff, like they don't want any of it to be true. So they just shift the timeline so that suddenly the biblical account doesn't make sense.
Right.
And this is like a well-known discussion and disagreement within Egyptology, this archaeological Egyptology. And so, yes, that is being proposed, that Joseph ruled in a unique portion of history within Egypt's dynasties over a monotheistic, which is unheard of in ancient Egypt, that he would rule over a monotheistic kingdom. So or that there was a time period of a monotheistic kingdom. So in the same way, there's a strangely, uniquely missing place in Assyria's king's list where supposedly a monotheistic god took over around the time of Jonah.
Yeah, very interesting. And, it makes you wonder a little bit, like Jonah was sent out as a missionary. Joseph here is like a super missionary. He literally shows up and wins the game. If there was a game of missionary, he won it.
That's
and, whenever you look at that process, it makes me wonder, it's like where there is light, there is no shadow or variation. So when God shows up in a actual, like more physical presence, a real tangible way, like Pastor Joe was saying, an outstretched arm. I'm out here with you. I'm not sitting back and kind of letting the world move as it normally would move. I'm here with you, just in case anybody was wondering. And not only that, but I'm going to take care of my people. You're going to get Goshen later when you have the plagues and there's darkness over there. There's going to be light over here. We're not going to play this mixing game. So if I'm going to be here, nothing else can be here. And so then the people's hearts are going to have to change. When you see like, oh, you have the God of the Nile, cool, I can fix that. Oh, you have the God of this, cool, I can do that too. Everything that your gods can do, throw them in a blender. I'm all of that plus 900 million. So, it's like their mindset had to have had some adjustment, But I mean, and I'm not trying to say like Jonathan would change tomorrow, but you know, if you wake up in the morning and your whole world gets rocked and everything is immediately better by like 1,000-fold, and the threat is if you don't listen, you're all going to starve to death. You're going to be in tune to that message.
Right.
Hey, if you don't take care of these next 7 years, you're going to be dead and you're not going to have any food. On top of that, my God's real. On top of that, here's a bunch of miracles. On top of that, we have Jacob and these boys. In case you were wondering, like if you really want to know, you can go knock on their door and go ask, hey, who did you kill? Everybody. Okay, got it. Giants included? Yeah, we don't have any giants. So we surrender in advance. And your God is awesome. But I mean, in a real theological way, I think God plants himself down. It's like the oil and the water. They don't mix. Everything else has to go. And he's like, if I'm here, there's not going to be any weird worship, any strange gods or whatever. Like when the ark is there with Dagon, you know, this thing falls over. It's like we both can't be worshipped at the same time. These are not compatible. So I wonder if that's even just a simplicity of, hey, God touched down a little bit and it was like, everything else got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, just kind of a tangent point. This whole thing is the conversation we're having about the possibility of the Pharaoh adopting faith in Yahweh, and then Jonah being a missionary. It reminds me of Isaiah 19, because that's the only place in Scripture that says this. What I'm going to read something real quick. It says, verse 16, that in that day the Egyptians will be like women. They'll tremble with fear beneath the uplifted hand of the Lord of hosts when he brandishes it against them. The land of Judah will bring terror to Egypt. Wherever Judah is mentioned, Egypt will tremble over what the Lord of hosts has planned against it. In that day, 5 cities in the land of Egypt will speak the language of Canaan and swear allegiance to the Lord of hosts. One of them will be called the city of destruction, or the city of the sun. In that day, there will be an altar to Yahweh in the center of the land of Egypt, a pillar to the Lord near her border. It will be a sign and a witness to the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt. When they cry out to the Lord because of their oppressors, he will send them a savior and defender to rescue them. The Lord will make himself known to Egypt, and on that day Egypt will acknowledge the Lord. They'll worship him with sacrifices and offerings. They'll make vows to Yahweh and fulfill them. The Lord will strike Egypt with a plague. He will strike, but then heal them. They will turn to the Lord. He will hear their prayers and heal them. And lastly, these very significant verses here. Verse 23, in that day there will be a highway from Egypt to Assyria. The Assyrians will go to Egypt, and the Egyptians will go to Assyria. The Egyptians and the Assyrians will worship together. And in that day Israel will join a 3-party alliance with Egypt and Assyria, a blessing upon the earth. The Lord of hosts will bless them, saying, blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, my handiwork, and Israel, my inheritance. So why wasn't Jonah sent to Kittim? Why wasn't Jonah sent to Aramea? Why wasn't Jonah sent to, Ur?
That was awesome.
So it's like, here we got Joseph going to Egypt, and I just think it's fascinating. I don't, and to me, from what I can remember from Jubilees, even chapter 9, it was the oath that all the children of Noah swore that they wouldn't take each other's land.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Shem who got not only the land of Canaan, but also Syria, right, into the land of Babylon, because it was Japheth who got the northern territory,
right,
and Shem got from Canaan all the way to India, possibly into China. He got the middle swath where it's both warm and cold.
China.
Don't trust China. Sorry, anyway, that's a meme for another day. But
yeah,
Shem,
basically. I'm sorry, I was going to agree with you. We got the map there. So Shem did have China and all that.
But remember what Ham says to Canaan, and I think it's chapter 9. He's like, no, don't go take Shem's land. You weren't given that.
Mm-hmm.
Remember the oath that we swore to the holy judge and to Noah our forefather. You know what I'm saying? So like, it just makes you wonder. Everyone gives Ham such a hard time because of what happened in chapter 7, but like, he's defending the righteous oath. He's not being like Esau. He's defending the righteous oath to his child and chastising his child for trying to break this oath, for even planning to break this oath. And we just assume big bad Egypt, right? The whole time, right? But clearly, if we take a microscopic look at all these nations, like there's ebbs and flows. Like they weren't always just apostate. Like there was possibly some people that were trying to do what's right. Clearly, in Genesis 20, in Genesis 12, both Abimelechs and both pharaohs of Egypt are trying to do righteousness by Abraham, and he's the one acting in fear, suspecting them of evil.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And if we can even believe in the Genesis Apocryphon, apparently Abraham taught the words of Enoch to Pharaoh of Egypt. So that could be a lasting effect here as well.
Right.
So there's just so much here. I'm going to stop, but there's so much here.
Well, I got to get y'all to dig in on this. I gotta have y'all's take on this. So before we change subjects again, because I see kingdom written all over this, and
Oh yeah,
nothing new under the sun, right?
yeah.
So with that being the way it was, there's a few statements in here to me, in my mind, this all goes together. We've got in 9, Pharaoh's kingdom was well ordered, and there was no adversary and no evil person therein. We also have the land of Egypt was at peace before Pharaoh because of Joseph. And then the statement at the end of verse 7, only on the throne shall I be greater than you. So I don't know. I see kingdom written all over that, and we hear this idea of Yeshua ben Joseph, Yeshua ben David, right? Like coming the first time kind of in the same manner as Joseph, and the second time in the manner of David. That's the correlation that people make there. But I don't know. I see kingdom in this. I see, I don't know, almost millennial reign type stuff in this. Y'all have any thoughts on any of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and what's more beautiful is that it's done not in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
It's done in Heliopolis, the city of the sun.
Right. And Egypt was the ruling kingdom, but there were other kingdoms too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're right. Yeah. And as a result, just like in the kingdom come, all nations come to the New Jerusalem for food, water, refuge, and medicine. In Joseph's lifetime, all nations came to Egypt for food, which would provide them sustainability of life in their lands as they went back. So same concept. And not only do they pledge themselves in the details of Genesis, they pledge, they ran out of money. So then they pledge themselves in servitude to Joseph's power and his kingdom. So it's because of the resources and the wisdom prepared by Joseph, Christ is going to prepare a place for us. When the time is ready, all nations draw to those preparations out of desperation. And he's not just their spiritual savior, Christ is their physical savior as well in the mortal flesh. Like he's literally, the city he comes down with has food, water, resources, medicine. And this is why Isaiah 55 and Revelation 22, literally the Spirit says, come drink of this water freely. Come buy food and milk without money. Like we got you, and it's just an amazing concept of how like the Father, just like he prepared Leviathan and Behemoth on day 5, not to be used until a specific moment in the future, but he prepared it. Like it's just that the wisdom of Egypt, the wisdom of Joseph being displayed in Egypt is the same wisdom the Father and the Son display for all of creation, for this final wonderful moment where there'll be famine across the whole world, and they have to come to the city that Christ is head over to live, and as a result, their lives will be changed forever. So I'm not suggesting that the people that came to Joseph in Egypt abandoned worship to their pagan gods, but that definitely will be the case with Christ. No one will be able to worship false gods when Christ reigns over the earth. So there's a ton of parallels. I think people have tried to count in the past to where there's like, at least I haven't gone through, I don't have the list available, but like I've heard pastors talk about people have counted and there's an easily noticeable at least 100 different parallels between Joseph and Christ's life. I'm suspecting we could probably find more if we put on our kingdom glasses.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Jubilees.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good, man. So good.
Yeah. It's an amazing thing. Just another concept about the last 2 verses of chapter 40, 12 and 13. In the year that Isaac died. it came to pass as Joseph had said in the interpretation of his 2 dreams. So it seems as if Joseph had been sold, betrayed by his brothers, sold into Egypt, to the point where now when Isaac's dying, like even Isaac knew that Joseph had been gone missing and presumed dead, you know? And so Angel didn't show up and tell Isaac the truth, nor Rebecca. God had a plan.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? God definitely had a plan for Joseph, and apparently Joseph played it right. Verse 5, he was discreet.
Mhm.
Yep.
He played it right.
Mhm.
Hopefully we can learn something from that too, because just because the Father shows us something doesn't mean he gives us every detail of how things are going to play out. We've got to trust what his word says.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like you said before, who knows what kind of dynamics would have been imposed had they had known who he was.
Right.
That could have thrown off this whole thing to where we
Yep.
get to verse 13. He's actually doing the fulfilling of the interpretation of the dreams, and to go through, like, I don't know about you guys, but if you've ever tried to plan anything with a group of people and then do the follow through can be more difficult than the planning.
Absolutely.
To get them to agree to
Yep.
the planning is sometimes easier than the actual follow through of like, okay, this is what we agreed upon, guys. Let's stick to this. Come on now. Come on. So imagine him working throughout the nation, trying to say to the people, like, we got to build these storehouses. And then, yes, I know we're not going to use all that grain this year. We can't take it all to market. We got to save it. We got to put it in these storehouses. Let's stick to the plan. Yeah, but it's like been 3 or 4 years and nothing's happened, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I can just hear the complaints now, right? The
Right.
people are like,
Oh,
what are
yeah.
you talking about? Like, this is just a waste. Like, they're sitting at the bazaar at the local market, just complaining with each other, drinking their rice alcohol, just being like, what is this, man? Like, this guy's having us put our food in these storehouses for what? You know what I mean? Like, until year 7 happens and the slim cows
Mhm.
are visible. And then they're
Yeah.
finally like, oh, okay. And then all the other nations start showing up because they hear they have apparently so much corn. I've got a translation of corn. I don't know what yours
Yeah.
says.
Yeah, it says corn.
Says corn.
They got so much corn they can't even count it.
Yeah, one measure is producing 1,800 measures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, this is more evidence that what you're suggesting, Kyle, is it's almost as if they're under the blessing of Yahweh's covenant,
Amen.
right? Because that's what's promised to Yahweh's covenant in Leviticus, is that your land and fruit will be blessed, your baskets will be full, right?
Mhm.
So I just in Deuteronomy 28, it just seems to me that it's very possible that Joseph took over and Yahweh took over.
Mm.
And they were telling the people, like, we're not going to be worshiping these gods. We're going to, am I saying that they instituted Shavuot and tabernacles and the weekly Sabbath? I don't know. But clearly the blessing of God is on them. Not just in the storing what they were growing, but clearly with what they're growing. This is supernatural.
Yeah.
To my understanding.
Yeah.
If there's any farmers out there that you've ever had a crop come in that was 18 times more than you expected, then I'll
or
gladly
just-
be corrected.
1,800 measures more.
1,800.
Yeah.
1,800.
With my minimal farming experience, let me go ahead and just speak for everybody. That does not happen.
Right. Yeah. So clearly they got the blessing on the land as well. So what's interesting about Egypt, though, to do this in Egypt as opposed to any other nation, is they have the Nile,
Mhm.
which
Yep.
was their source of perpetual irrigation for their farming.
Mhm.
So there was consistency, right? It was one of the deals that they worshiped Ptah and Osiris when they had a good flood, because they knew the next year's harvest was going to be strong.
Mhm.
And so it's interesting that this positioning of the geography where Joseph is, because Joseph was initially taken by the Midianites, right? They were sold to the Midianites and then to Egyptians. So the Midianites could have sold him to to Babylon, or they could have sold him to the Greeks or to the Arameans or something, or to Tyre and Sidon. But no, they sold him to Egypt and all of this worked out intentionally.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So good. So good.
Oh yeah. Well, you see the blessings through the obedience.
Yeah.
And as the Father even says, He desires obedience over sacrifice.
Yeah.
And it's so evident here that through the blessing, and here's the cool part where it's like I'm bringing in your family's going to live here in Goshen now. And by the way, it's almost like God just totally paved the way for this, because he's like, there's going to be no Hasatan, there's going to be no Satan, there's going to be no evil, and everything's going to be well ordered. And on top of that, you're getting the best of the land.
Yeah.
Even though they're going to look at you and go, oh, sheep herders, ooh, stinky people. Oh, y'all live over there. Oh, you're going to let us live over there? Cool. That's no problem.
Yeah, and just real quick, I just want to focus on verse 8 and 9 because I think it's a beautiful, when we talk about being blessed to be a blessing. Joseph ruled over the land of Egypt, all the princes of Pharaoh and all his servants, and all who did the king's business loved him. Because he's upright, without pride and arrogance, no respecter of persons, didn't accept bribery gifts, but judged in uprightness for all the people of the land. So the king's business means international trade. So he's meeting with envoys from other nations. He's everyone that knows him, who's a part of his delegated authority structure, are also dealing with international trade and all the the things that they did, because literally they're on the Nile. It was a huge source of trade. It was a big part of their country and their culture, and everyone who did business with him loved him. Like it just makes you think, like, what influence did he have? I mean, if he's only second to Pharaoh in all the land, is he there whenever he has the state banquets and rulers from other nations come in? Is he telling the rulers from other nations, by the way, because the Pharaoh's in 100% agreement with Joseph's plan.
Yep.
They're in unity here. So is Pharaoh also communicating to other kings, hey guys, we're storing up. I hope you guys are too. We're storing up, but if they're too busy trying to make war, then they're going to have problems.
Right.
Problems with actually trying to make storehouses. But anyway, I'm just saying, like, this type of, he's blessed, he's walking with righteousness, and that spills out onto every person and everything he does, to the point where all the land of Egypt was at peace because of Joseph. The Lord was with him, gave him favor and mercy for all his generations, before all those who knew him and those who heard concerning him. So what does it mean, those who heard concerning him? He's already loved by everybody in the land.
Yeah, word spreading.
Right. Yeah, it's getting out there. So
and of course, the people who show up to Egypt when it gets bad, and now they're buying food to sustain themselves, because it was people from all over the place, not just the Jacob's boys, right? It was people from all over the place were going to Egypt. They all were walking into a well-ordered, amazing kingdom that was prepared to receive them, ruled by a righteous person who clearly there was no Satan. There's no evil people there. There's no corrupt judges and officials. There's no unjust weights and measures when it comes to international trade. They're just doing business righteously, and the whole world. I personally think that this moment here saved probably 90% of the population of the world. Like, if I could go into the spiritual game, the backstory of the unclean spirits and how Satan's ruling things, I think Satan loves to play this double game of, like, oh, if you worship Satan, he'll give you all this wealth and opulence. Meanwhile, God's covenant's about to kick in. And you're about to suffer destitution, warfare, and plague, and drought and famine and death. Not because God's trying to kill you intentionally, but because you're rebelling against the creation. You're rebelling against the order of how things are supposed to work. And Satan is setting you up to fail, distracting you with the wealth and riches, the opulence, the fame, the whatever, the perceptions of power that you think you have. He's just setting you up to fail, and he'll let you boast in him or how great you have it for a little while until you fail. And when you fail, a lot of you are going to die.
Right.
And that's kind of like the slow death that he tricks people into, right?
Right.
And so I think that if you've got a lot of these nations around them that are engaged in constant warfare, they don't have time to save. I mean, how are you going to, your food's going out to distant regions to feed your troops. Unless you're being attacked at home and your fields are being burnt, because, it was a common practice that they just go through and burn everything.
Right.
And was it Nebuchadnezzar who also would throw salt on the field so you couldn't grow there again anymore? Right. Which means you got generational poverty of food. So, like, Satan is truly evil, right? So, like, this I mean, that sounds redundant. I know we're speaking about the Bible, but like I'm just saying, like when you really think about what's going on here, the whole world is being deceived, or I shouldn't say the whole world, but the majority of the people that are worshiping Satan under their different auspices of their gods, and they're suffering the result of their rebellion against God. And then here's God setting up Joseph in Egypt to show an incredible amount of mercy to the world that doesn't deserve it. Like they don't deserve God to be setting all this up for them ahead of time. In the same way, when the kingdom comes, they don't deserve the mercy they'll be shown then. But
That'll preach.
That's just who God is. He's rich in mercy, as it says in Scripture.
Amen.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Ooh.
Yep. And what's interesting is you see like all this stuff going on. It's God. When we look at God, we know He has plans for good, and so we kind of have to like put that before we read the story. But before the story it's kind of crazy. We see Abraham having to come out of Ur. That's the start of this whole thing. God's like, hey, by the way, random dude just showed up, leave everything, figure it out. And then we kind of see the children start to show, come through. And then, okay, we're here with Jacob. And you're like, oh man, you're two kids from some of the most awesome people that ever existed, special covenant, special revelation, all that kind of stuff. So there's so many things that's going on where there's a lot of turbulence. There's a lot of uneasiness. And the people of God are looking a little bit like, did we mess up? Where did we fail along the way? We're two of the coolest kids on the earth right now, and you want to kill me. It's not going to work out. This is not how I think God drew it up. There was the head before, and the number 2 is going to be number 1 and all that, but Jacob had to do something he didn't want to do. He didn't want to have to kill his brother. He didn't want to have to go through with any of that. But with that, he said, I'm going to do everything by the right way. And so there's just turmoil, just over and over and over again, while God's like, I'm trying to bless you. Stop being dumb while I'm trying to bless you. You have a house, you have a land, you have a supernatural, like what we just read here in chapter 40. This is what He wanted for His people back at home. He didn't want to, why have to go through all these links to finally get there? But there's this, long-standing things like, I will create a covenant with you, and it will be by my standard. I'm not going to do it your way. I'm going to do it my way, and that way is going to be correct. And all the people involved are going to be the right people at the right time for the right story. So you get the whole story of Joseph being sold and all this, and in Joseph's mind, and even in the family's mind. We read through the 12 patriarchs as Joe brought up. They're all kind of sitting at home dealing with the emotions and the feelings of that. And their whole life is wrecked. They're all trying to adjust to, like, based on what we did, who are we really? What's our life like, and how do we recover from this, and how do we move on from it? All the while, Joseph's going through the most. He's got Potiphar, and then Potiphar's wife, and then he's a slave, and then now he's in prison, and then. But Joseph never loses faith. The whole rest of the family's kind of a little bit teeter-tottery. They're back home trying to get their stuff together. There's a little story with Judah and Tamar. You're like, ooh. Uh-oh. Well, who's burning who with fire? But we get past all that, and then we see now Joseph is not only doing what he's supposed to do as he's following God. It's blessing on blessing on blessing on blessing. I mean, can you imagine, as you walk, each step you take is with success. To the world standard, us reading it, we're looking at Joseph's like, oh, don't put me in that situation. Not with Potiphar's wife. We're all trying to figure out what's going on. But as we look through that, Joseph continues to follow the Messiah. Follow the Father, follow him so perfectly that now everything he touches is turning to gold. Not literally, but 1,800 times each measure of wheat or corn, whatever it is, that there is now no more Satan. When in the world has this ever happened? We go from brother fighting brother, armies fighting armies, to now everybody's at peace. So through all the turmoil, when you finally just let God take control, when you finally just say, all the human brain and all the human emotion, take that out of the scenario, let God be in control and watch what happens. And then we can see it play out. And it's so evident that the king, the Pharaoh of Egypt's like, you know what? Not only are you a cool dude, I got a whole special name for you. Now I'm going to say it the best that I know how to. It's Saphantaphans, which means treasury of the glorious rest. I never got a name like that. No one on this call has ever got a name like that. We're all just trying to live our best to be honored by the Most High. This dude's getting honored on earth. when does that get to happen? Normally we have to wait till we die and we resurrect and we make it to the kingdom before we get some honor and glory. And Joseph's getting honored by one of the most influential men in all the world of, I know who you are, I know who your God is, and our whole life, our whole region, our whole generation is completely changed because of what you brought to the table. And it's not you, because you are so humble. Every time we try to give you a praise, you just give it back to the Most High. Every time we try to put something on you, it's because of the God I serve. He's the reason for all this. Give him all the praise. And I just love that. I just pray that's something that we can do, that's our message we give out to the world, that when the world sees us, they see him first.
That's awesome. Sean, you want to give us the last word, brother?
Yeah, I love the name of that meeting, Safantifon. That's really cool. As we were talking, I tried to look up the word, and all I got was the root of that name, which is Saphan, Sephan. And apparently, according to this online research site, apparently it's a 55% Hebrew origin name. It's still used around the world today, Saphan, and it means a great person with a big heart to help people, and also a leader.
How about that?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And that's the root word of Safantifon. So
Interesting.
Treasury of Glorious Rest definitely makes sense to me as well. That's
Very
amazing.
cool. Very cool.
Thank you guys for having me on. This is amazing. This book just doesn't disappoint. Not only with its not only the consistency of the canon, but also just like Jubilees has the pseudonym for it is Little Genesis, not because it's lesser in value or weight, but because it has more little details. That's why it was given that name historically, and that's what we keep pulling out of this every time we dig into a new chapter of Jubilees. It's just more little details. To me, it enriches my understanding, which enriches my faith, and that's why I love it. And so hopefully the viewer is experiencing the same.
Amen.
I pray the same thing, because I think that, there's nothing new under the sun, and the more we know about our past, the more we're going to know about our future and the kingdom that is to come.
Yep.
Sean, we thank you so much for joining us, brother.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Always awesome having you on, man. And I am looking forward to our next part, where we'll be addressing chapters 41 through 50. And we will see y'all next time for that on Anchor to Truth. God bless.
Shalom.
Ciao.